I read 35 books in 2024. It might be 36. It might be 34. I kind of forgot to check. These are all the books excluding two because I couldn't find it at the library, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really care. So this video is pretty much, for the most part, gonna be little to no editing whatsoever. So little no editing, not scripted at all. This is just me yapping. So about all of the books I read, I'm gonna be going on every single book, some longer than others depending on how much I liked it. This is visually probably not going to be very entertaining. So if you're doing some chores around the house, that kind of thing, whatever, like you can just listen to this. There's nothing requiring you to really watch it whatsoever. I'm sitting on the floor, like this is kind of I'm talking, I'm yapping, and that is most of the video is going to be me yapping. So if you're down for that, I'm glad. There's going to be timestamps for each book. So if you don't care about a book, just like skip it, dude. Your time's important. I don't care. Don't waste your time. Listen to me yap about some book that is you don't really care about. My goal of this video is to explain the books I read, what I felt about them, how I like them, and then hopefully you can find some books that you maybe like, and everyone wins. I get to yap, you get to read some good books. Okay. I went kind of neural this year. I don't know what happened. I usually don't read more than like 5 books. But something snapped and I got super into reading this year. So this is it. I'm not going to be ranking my books. There's not going to be any like out of 5 stars or out of 10 stars, anything in that manner. Not really happening right now. So this is also going to include plays, novellas, but I hardly read any plays or novellas. So most of these books, unless I say otherwise, are fiction novels, like full-length novels. All right, first book, you already know, starting it off strong with 1984. You've probably heard of this, or you've probably had to read it at school or something. I didn't. I read this bad boy on my own. Now I'm kind of cheating right now because I read this in December, but stop talking. I finished it on like Christmas Eve of 2023, and I know this video is for 2024, but this book, it ended up being so important to all the other books I read this year, and a lot of the stuff I talk about, I bring back this book. So I'm like, I have to talk about it because it was so close to the end of the year anyway, and I think it's an important book that I did read, and so I think it's valid for me to talk about it. Pretty much 1984, you probably already know. Big Brother, friggin', Thought Police. I don't know. It sounds a little corny when I'm saying it out loud. But this book was immaculate. Like, I freaking adore this book. The first 2/3 are good. They're serviceable. They're great. There's nothing wrong with them, in my opinion. I mean, there's some things here and there a little bit. Okay, like, this is dragging a little bit. But when I first read it, this was just different than most other books I'd ever read before. So that in itself was intriguing. And especially if you haven't read a lot of books, I think this one and another one I'm going to mention soon, Fahrenheit 451, there's some really good ones to read because for me, they really showed me how much like different a book could be and how much could really be in it that I hadn't seen before. And 1984 is a pivotal book, in my opinion, for me at least, reading, because it just opened my eyes to like some of the crazy stuff books can do. Like specifically part 3 of this book. The book is split up into 3 parts. And part 3, I can't put into words how mind-blowing it was, how amazing. I mean, like, I was talking to my brother about it because he read it too, and he was like, I don't know about part 3, dude. But for me, part 3 was nutty. I was tweaking during part 3. Okay, so I'm stupid right now. But I was going nuts reading part 3 because it was so good. It was like the first time in years that I had sat down and just burnt through part of a book. I finished part 3 in about like a day. Just Christmas Eve, I pretty much just sat there reading it. I swear I have a life. But it's really mind-boggling. It's super. It encapsulated some topics I had in my head, and it articulated them perfectly. This book is very much psychological, mental, political. It has some interesting takes on some political things, but most of all, I think it's a really, really interesting case study on like mental reality and like what is truth and what is not, and how do we determine what truth is? That's one of the themes, at least. I mean, you've probably heard of it. It is regarded as a classic, but I mean, this is one of the classics that I think is valid to be a classic because it is great. It is great. The last third for me, just completely. The first 2/3 could have been complete garbage, and I still would love this book just because the last third really hit like a soft spot for my nerdy ass brain. But I liked it a lot. I actually 1984. Every time I look at it, I smile. I gotta reread it. But man, just that last third on its own, amazing. Okay. That's the first book. I swear, not all of them are going to be this long, but when it's a book I really like, it gets to be that way. Let me check the next one. Disclaimer, I mean, the books I mention in here are probably going to come back. I'm probably going to make allusions to them, so take that as you will. But yeah, this book took me a year to read. Really long time to read, but I finished it at the end of 2023. Okay, next book. This was for school. Pygmalion. I'm not gonna lie, this kind of sucked, booty cheeks. Pygmalion is a play, and I didn't really like it. We read it for school. It's about this like girl who sells flowers, and this British dude is like, "We're gonna make you sound like a proper British person," and the girl's like, "Okay, sure." It covers class and poverty and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, I just didn't like it that much. It's just like, there wasn't much to it. It was kind of boring. I got this one from the library, hence the tape. You guys can't find my address quite yet. I literally forgot most of this. It was super forgettable. The end, I think I started falling asleep towards because there's this huge narration part that just like, I don't know. I'm not a big play guy, if I'm going to be real. I didn't like it, so that's about it. I read it for school. That's it. Okay, next book I also read for school, but I read... Okay, there's a little plot to this one. I read this one before school, in like middle school. Yeah, I read this one like a handful of years back, and it was like before I read 1984. I read Fahrenheit 451, which you've probably had heard of or read for school or something. I think every book is best enjoyed outside of school. I hate school with like, a passion. But this book I read before we had to read it in school, and I loved it. This is still probably my favorite book, or one of my. It is definitely a top book for me. Period. It is just I love Fahrenheit 451 so much. It's kind of similar to 1984 in the regard that they're both red. That it's kind of dystopian, like 1984 is. It kind of has a dystopian feel to it, and it covers basically the idea of the book is that books have been banned not because of really tyrannical reasons, but just because people stopped reading and they didn't really want books anymore, and they were like, "Hey, get this junk out of here. We don't want it anymore." And so books are banned. There's firemen who go and burn them. I always find explaining plots to books super corny, but whatever. Some people like it. Firemen go and burn the books now because they're illegal. And the main character is a fireman, and then he reads a book, and that's what this book is about. Is he finds a book, and he's like, "Whoa!" But it's not just that. It goes into a deeper message of a lot of things. It's pretty political, but I'd say it's so optimistic. Like, I think these books are great companion pieces, 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. I feel like they go together like peanut butter and chocolate. That's not really a typical comparison, but, they go together really well, in my opinion, and I think they are great to both read. Fahrenheit 451 is short. It is really short. It is about, it's not even 200 pages, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, it's 158 pages, and the font, you can see it, the font is not exactly small. This is a pretty large sized book compared to my other ones. It's a short read. It still took me a while to read because this was before I was reading a lot. We reread it for school, which is why I get to put it on this list. And I was so happy to reread it for school because I was like, dude, I love this book, man. I love this book. Made a lot more sense rereading it again a few years later. I love Fahrenheit 451 so much. It's great. It's amazing. It just covers like how we consume media, which is really important these days because of social media and everything, and like freaking brain rotting and like scrolling on TikTok for 15 hours a day. Like it somehow covers it in such a mature way before any of this was like at the time. This book was written over 60 years ago in the 70s, I believe. When was it published? I kind of forgot. Yeah, 1978. No. No. Oh my god. Okay, no. It was written in, I think it was written in 1951, which is absolutely nuts. This was written in 1951, and it's so prevalent to today. If you are at all interested in that type of stuff, you know, how we consume, how we ban certain things because as a society we deem it as discreditable and not fit, and we don't want it anymore, and we just keep continuing to do things for pleasure, for entertainment, until we lose all like intellectual value and everything, then this book is like the Bible for that. It literally defined what a book could be for me in such an interesting way, and I absolutely adore this book. 1984 feels like an inverse of this book. They're both amazing. I'd like Fahrenheit a little better, probably. But Fahrenheit has this optimistic viewpoint on everything that somehow, no matter how far away society strays from, you know, a path of a more nuanced and fuller kind of life, if that makes any sense, there's still belief and hope in this book throughout that we can push past it. 1984 is more of a it's more of like a pessimistic viewpoint on similar topics. It's more government focused, I feel like, in 1984, but it still focuses on the individual and the role that plays in the bigger cogs in the system. But in Fahrenheit, it feels like the people chose what happens in Fahrenheit. Society chose to get books banned. In 1984, it was more like letting things slip, governments taking in, and henceforth the negative qualities that can come with that. 1984 feels very much more of a tragedy in some regards. I don't want to spoil anything, but in some aspects it feels like a tragedy, and it feels pessimistic. It's still trying to say something, and there's hope, but in a different, more pessimistic way. That's more like, hey, this is the worst case scenario kind of deal, like we better fix it. And then Fahrenheit's also like worst case scenario, we can fix it. We, you know, even if we screw up really bad, there's still hope. And I like that. I'm a little, that, you know, hits me in my heart. No. That just, it warms my heart, you know. It's comforting to read stuff like that. And I think it's important because of a lot of the pessimism that I feel like is found in a lot of our media today, which I don't think is bad. There is definitely sad and pessimistic and down in the dumps kind of deals. I love some of that stuff. But it's so refreshing to see some positivity and some hope coming from this book. And it just really, it restores hope. That's what it did for me in some ways. And then whenever I think about things getting too, I don't know, whenever I think about things and I'm like, oh, a book, stuff can be positive. It can be hopeful. It's what the author wants to say. And, you know, the author, Ray Bradbury, definitely has something to say with this book. And I think it is worth checking out. I think everybody should check this book out because it's amazing. Read it on your own. Don't read it for school. Reading for school sucks. It's so hard. Okay, next book. Let me make sure I have the order right. Yes, okay. Next book here is The Alchemist. I'm going to be right off the bat here. People love The Alchemist. This is not my copy, by the way. This is my girlfriend's copy. She recommended that I read The Alchemist because she was like, dude, Alchemist is awesome. I was like, okay, I'll read it. The Alchemist, I've heard someone say online, I think it was William Dozer, I forgot how to say his name. I love his videos. I've watched a lot of them. But I think it was him. If not, I'm sorry. He was saying that the younger you read The Alchemist, the better. And I think there's a lot of validity to that because most of the stuff that this book has to say, I kind of already knew. The Alchemist is really short. It's not even 200 pages. It is 180 pages. So it's really short. It's not bad by any means, but for me at least, it felt like a self-help book with some plot and as fiction. I don't mean to dog on this book too hard because it's not bad. It has some very positive messages, kind of about finding yourself and following your dreams and that kind of deal. But everything it had to say was nothing new to me, and so it felt like kind of a repeat of information I already knew, and it wasn't groundbreaking or astonishing to me really because I already felt like I was like, yeah, I already grasped and understood a lot of the concepts it was trying to say and a lot of the positive and hopeful messages. And so for me, it didn't do much for me because there is barely plot. Like there's a plot, but the characters are like paper thin, really. They just kind of do stuff, and they're there to show you this guy's messages. It's not pretending to be anything else. That's pretty much what it is. It's not your typical book of like, oh, he thought, she thought, he felt like it's very like he felt sad. He went and looked. He knew he would be trapped. Like it's pretty basic, not in a terrible way. But I think the younger and the less you have read, the better this book will be. For me, it offered nothing new. I'd gone through a phase of listening to self-help audiobooks. Let's not talk about it. Anyways, this book, I had pretty much heard and grasped everything it had said, so it just didn't do it for me. Depending on the person, it could be good. Me, I'm gonna pass. Still, I don't think it's bad. I just think it was. I read it a little too late in my life, I guess, where it didn't offer me anything. Okay, next up we have Of Mice and Men. We had to read this one for school. It was really good, though. I really enjoyed Of Mice and Men. It's also a really short one. This one's a novella. Actually, Fahrenheit 451 was a novella. I forgot to say that. I'm sorry. Yeah, this book is literally novella, I guess. It's 105 pages. So you could bust it out pretty quick, too. I mean, the font there's not big. I got this one from the library, read it for school, so I don't have a copy. But really sad book. Really, really sad book. Really good. Memorable characters. It takes place in the 1930s during the Great Depression, I think. I'm pretty sure. Anyways, two guys go to California for work, and it's just about these two guys' relationships, Lenny and George, and honestly, I forgot which character is which is going to make me look really bad, but really heartfelt, really sad, and kind of, covers the American dream. Why we read it in school, everyone wants to cover the American dream. I don't know. Covers the American dream if that's interesting to you. Usually it doesn't really, not that much. This book kind of made me interested in it, but it is about literally just two dudes on a work farm in California looking for work and their relationship with each other. One is kind of this skinny dude, kind of like, let's get it done. Kind of, I don't know, this is a really poor explanation. It's a sad one. It's sad. It almost made me cry. And I don't cry because, I don't know, I just don't cry much. But yeah, that was good. Solid. It's known as a classic, and I can see why. Okay, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I forgot to say, this is really, really bad on my part, my presentation skills here. These books, the ones I just went over, besides 1984, these were all January through March. I literally don't remember when I read exactly each one of these, because I made the list like later down the line, so I kind of forgot. Now we're in April. April is where it starts in concrete. I know I read it in April. So first for April, we have The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Now this one is known as a classic. I heard about it. It is about a kid, Huckleberry Finn, going down the Mississippi River on a raft with an escaped slave, Jim, and he's trying to help Jim get free. This takes place before the Civil War, where slavery was still legal, and it's amazing. This is probably one of my favorite books, period. This is definitely one of my top picks. Give it the freaking gold star. I love this book. Anyone who knows me, I don't shut up about this. I literally do not shut the hell up about this book because, I just cracked it. Well, poop. Okay. I literally don't shut up about this book because I love it so much. It is possibly the most fun adventure book, period. It was written in the 1880s. Yeah, okay, 1885. This book was written in 1885, after the Civil War. It takes place before the Civil War, as I said. And it's just like It's fun. It is so fun. It's Mark Twain, sequel to Tom Sawyer. You don't really need to read Tom Sawyer. I find Tom Sawyer annoying as all hell, but Huckleberry is a fantastic book. It's a little slow in the first 100 pages, but after that, it just does not stop. It is so great. It This is like a cornerstone book. When I read it, I was like, yeah, it was fun. I don't know how much I really loved it. I thought it was. I remember I thought it was good, but the more I thought about it, and the more I like reflect on it, and the more books I have read since, I'm like, what the crud was I thinking? This book is incredible. It is so. It's funny. It is fun. I mean, it's 1880s humor, so I mean, the best you can get. But Mark Twain is just. He's dry funny. He's funny with the situations, kind of, just what is happening, the nature of it, the things people are saying because of their lack of knowledge, all that stuff. It's just hilarious. Like, it's so. I don't know how to describe how fun this book is. It is this literal like this kid, Huckleberry. I don't want to give too much away, but he fakes his death and runs away, which is why he's on the raft. He's just like, I don't want to be part of society or civilization. I'm leaving. I'm dumping out. And so he finds this Jim, who he used to be friends with, who's also running away because he was going to get sold to a different owner. And he was like, nah, screw that. I'm out of here. So he ran away. And Huck believes that helping a slave is like a sin. He thinks it's like the worst thing you could possibly do. But then he starts to be like, oh, I'm just a bad person. And it's like, no, you're not. You're helping this guy get free. Like that's a good thing, dude. But it's just the duality is very funny in that aspect. I guess you could say a little dark in that regard. But Huck is just like, you gotta love Huck. And the absolute, like, they get into a lot of, like, cons and stuff, especially with these dudes called the Kings. There's a lot of, like, trickery, really clever trickery, and just, like, getting out of rough situations and tough situations, just, like, weaseling ways out, getting really deep into lies and stuff, and it's so entertaining. It is really entertaining. The parts with the Kings, you'll know what I'm talking about if you ever read this and get there, are by far the best. They are superb, dude. I love them. I love them so much. It is... like absolute the top tier of like a con. I don't know how else to describe it. This is like there's a lot of like con artistry in this book, kind of. It's so entertaining. The stuff they get into, the little pinches and whatnot. Great. I literally could not recommend Huckleberry Finn more. Next book is A Clockwork Orange, and my camera battery is dying, so I'm going to charge that and take a break. All right, so my camera overheated, and I expect that to happen multiple times. Anyways, we're on A Clockwork Orange now. I think I said, whoa. Okay, Clockwork Orange was when I started to really get into reading. When I finished Huckleberry Finn, I read it a lot faster, at least the end. I read the end of this book a lot faster than I read most other books. And then Clockwork Orange, what had happened actually, there's a little story with this one, okay? Bear with me. I had been to this like little store of like books and trinkets, and I was like, this store is it's cool. And I saw this bad boy sitting up there on this little like pedestal, and it has like the little plastic around it. I was like, wow, that's so cool. Anyways, I was like, I don't know. I've never even seen the movie. But it was cool because I could tell this was like a first edition copy because it had said, on the title, like, soon to be Stanley Kubrick's first motion picture since 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like the book based off of the movie, which I had heard existed. I literally knew nothing about it. But I was like, that'd be kind of cool. Look, got the orange frayed edges. I just like the look of the actual book. Anyways, I left because I was like, it's like $10. I'm good. And then I ended up going back to that place like a few days later, and it was still there. And I was like, I gotta buy it. I simply must. So I did. This is a weird, really, really weird book. I don't know how to explain it. I love the copy though, like the orange pages, because it's called A Clockwork Orange. Wow, okay. I'm sorry, I like my little first edition copy. Anyways, this book is weird. It's kind of like brain. It's trippy, but in a really cool way. I read this book and I was like, what the flip did I just read? I think something important to note is that there is a whole vocabulary of just like weird words. Like these words are not real words. They're made up or they're Russian, and they are like basically teenage slang in the book, and it's just made up. Like they're not real words. And so when you're reading it, you're like I remember I read the first line and I was like, what the actual hell does this mean? Like droogs. Like I was just like, what? Like we sat in the core of our milk bar making up our razadocs with what to do with the evening. A flip dark chill winter bastard through dry. Like I was like, what the hell is this? Me and my droogs? Like it made no sense. Apparently droogs means friends. I don't know. But it was interesting. And the clerk at the store was like, have you ever read it before? And I was like, no. And he was like, oh, well, it's a hard one. There's made up words in it. There's a little glossary on the back, but you got to flip back and forth. I'd keep 2 bookmarks with you. I was like, okay, and he was not wrong. I mean, he was right. Still really, really cool book. This is also a cornerstone book for me. It's about teenage gangs kind of literally like ruling society, and the main character is one of these dudes. He's a terrible person. It is first person the entire time, and I don't really want to spoil the plot because I knew nothing about it except that one shot of the guy strapped to the chair forced to watch videos. It covers the morality of what is good and bad, what is the point of being good if you don't have a choice, is probably the biggest theme here. And the thing is, when I read this book, I was kind of confused what it was trying to say with the way it ended. The movie ends the same way. And it wasn't until literally like a month ago I was reading some reviews on this other book, and then someone mentioned, like, oh yeah, the first edition book doesn't have the last chapter. And I was like, what? I had the first edition book. And the movie also didn't put in the last chapter. So it turns out there's this other version of the book that was released after because the author was like, actually, I want to add this last chapter back in. And it changes the entire book. They are basically 2 separate books depending on which version you read. There is one which I have without the last chapter. So does the movie. It doesn't have the last chapter. And then there's one with the last chapter, which changes everything. And I was like, dude, this is like a whole separate book. So at some point, I need to reread this book and read the last chapter because it changes literally like so much of the book and can turn it from either being negative or positive within like the flip of a switch. But man, Clockwork Orange is really cool. It's at least the version I read is really violent. Honestly, you get used to it after a while because it is so just repeated and repeated. In the beginning is a little slow. Part 1 is to show pretty much just how violent these gangs are, how violent these kids are, how unruly they are, the no rules in society, and just basically these kids getting away with like rape, murder, all this terrible stuff, stealing, with basically no repercussions up until a certain point. And the book is about what happens, society's solution of trying to fix this kind of. It's one way to put it. It's really interesting. It is basically bar for bar the movie. I like the book a little better. This is going to be a recurring theme of me reading books of Stanley Kubrick movies, like the books Stanley Kubrick movies were based off of. Loving the book and then not liking the movie that much. The movie was good though. I thought it was okay. It's a 70s movie that is super long, but that's just Stanley Kubrick. Okay. Next up we have, let me double check. We're in May now. No, we're still in April, my bad. Okay, A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is a Shakespeare play. I don't have it with me. I couldn't find it at the library, and I don't care. I hate Shakespeare. I fell asleep during this book. I didn't like it. It was a play. I can't do it with Shakespeare. I don't know what it is, but I can't do it. No, I'm good. I'm good on him. The book, I would get upset when we had to read it in class. We read it for school. It was one of the first times that I've genuinely, like, actually fell asleep during a book. Honestly, I don't even know if, like, it's fair for me to count it on this list because I think I fell asleep the entire last chapter and I just did not care. I just waited for the teacher to explain what happened. I hated it. I really didn't like it. Shakespeare is not for me. I feel like it's one of those things that maybe in 5 years I'll be like, you know what, I want to read Shakespeare, and then I will. But it ain't my flavor of snack, I guess you could say. That's about it. I'm sorry to Shakespeare fans. I'm being a little harsh. Next up is a big boy. We got Dune. Okay, this is fat. I love the cover art. I love the design for this book. And I was so excited. It's a big book. It's like freaking 600 pages. It has a glossary. It has an appendix. It has definitions of the words. I was like, that's cool, dude. That's so cool. I saw the movie. The movie was great. And then I saw the second movie. And I was like, dude, this is literally amazing. At first, the second movie I was like, but then it grew on me so hard. Second movie's great. Both the Dune movies are amazing. So I was like, I should read the book. Like, I should read it. I've seen the movie. It's both 1 and 2 of the Dune movies where they're all covered in the first book. And so I was like, bro, I should read it. I'll probably really like it. D for disappointment. I know people are going to get really upset with me. Dune, the book, sucked. It was lame. It was so freaking lame. And I know people are going to get like really mad with me. And hey, I don't care anymore because this book sucked. I don't like it. I don't know. Okay, I'm being really harsh on it. But the Dune book is possibly one of the like lamest, most underwhelming things oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna wait for that. It's probably the most disappointing read of my life. No, okay. I like to be very, very harsh on this book, but I'm serious. I really did not care for it. It was long. It was dragged out. All the boring parts, they just kind of glazed over. I know my bad. All the really interesting parts, they just glazed over. And I was like, what do you mean? This is the cool part. This is one of the rare instances where I think the movie is about 1,000,000 times better. The movie is just so good. It absolutely beats the book. I understand it's a classic. It changed things for the time. But in my opinion, it doesn't do it for me. It is trying to do such huge, crazy, big things. And the scale is lost. The scale is not there in the book. I don't care. It does not make me care about what's happening. It doesn't make the world feel authentic to me. And I know a lot of people praise this book for that, but I don't know if it's maybe just the movie was just so good that the movie for me set the scale, set how large everything was perfectly in a way that no other sci-fi thing has done. My big issue with sci-fi books is typically they want you to care about this huge world that doesn't feel earned, the scale doesn't feel like the author has really pushed the scale on you and like made it feel real and tangible. The movie does that beautifully. And the book, it's gone. It's all lost in the book. Feels just plot focused. I don't care about the characters whatsoever. I don't care about Paul Atreides. I genuinely don't in the book. I don't care about anyone really in the book, except maybe the dad. It's not necessarily boring. Well, actually, it can be pretty boring in some parts. It just was underwhelming. It was very underwhelming. I was so excited because I read the movie, and the movie is simply better. I mean, if I would honestly watch the movie first because this book is big. It's a freaking big old book. I'd watch the 2 movies, and if you like those enough, then maybe read the book. I know a lot of people love this book. I don't. So that's my hot take, I guess. Dune sucks. That's my hot take. Dune is not a good book. Not that good. It's pretty mid in my opinion. So there's the opinion of the day that'll get me like roasted alive. Okay. Yeah, the movie was better. Okay. Whew, okay, I am a freaking yapper, dude. Oh my goodness. Next up we have The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Okay, this is not a book I typically read, like, ever. At all. There's a movie about it. You probably have maybe heard of it, or you've heard of the book. It's about, in the 90s, it's about a kid. It is heavily implied that he has mental illness, something like that. Anyways, it's just about a kid going to high school and dealing with all of the stuff, being kind of an observational kid. He just kind of sits there and watches. He goes to football games, goes to all that stuff, but he doesn't interact most of the time. He'll just watch and observe. And it's about his experience in high school. And it's such a heartfelt book. It is so just wholesome and really just like, it's amazing. I don't know how else to say it. My girlfriend recommended me this. She was like, "This is great. Like, I feel like you should read it because it's really good." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe." And then eventually, I was like, "You know what? I'll give it a crack." It's short. What is it? It's like, yeah, it's 200 pages. Super simple to read because it's written from the first person of a ninth grader who has pretty basic prose, pretty basic writing, like "I am sad" kind of deal. But it is so good. It just what it sets out to go over, it does beautifully, and it's amazing. It's really heartfelt. It actually, I was tearing up when I finished it. Super emotional, I'd say. Just, just great book. I only have good things to say about this book, really. I could see it not being a lot of people's cup of tea. It is kind of modern, I guess, in some regards. It takes place in the 90s. There's some 90s like tropes they have in there, like of stuff they do that's like only 90s kids did. So it's like I wasn't born in the 90s, so I don't really know. But it's just really it's great. I told my friend about it. He read it too, and he really loved it too. So I mean, Perks being a Wallflower. If you've ever heard of Catcher in the Rye or read it, it's kind of like a spiritual successor to Catcher in the Rye. I like it better than Catcher in the Rye personally, um, but it's just so heartfelt. It's so personal. It is. It really does encapsulate kind of like ninth grade because that's the entire book just takes place in this kid's ninth grade at American high school, um, and friends he meets, stuff like that. It's super heartfelt, man. Super heartfelt. Great book. Um, Highly recommend it. It's amazing. Like it's there's no other way to put it. One of my favorite books. It's great. Okay. Next book, another absolute banger, dude. April, besides Dune, or no? Okay, yeah. Besides Dune, May was pretty good. May was pretty good. I don't know if I remembered to say we were on May, but with Dune we were on May. I'm really bad at keeping track. A Thousand Splendid Suns. We read this book for school, and it was fantastic. It was freaking amazing. It is about two girls in Afghanistan, and it's their entire life. It is their entire life. It starts in the 60s, and it ends in about like 2001, 9/11. Incredible. It goes over kind of the history of Afghanistan from a citizen's POV. It goes over how terrible a lot of the situations there are. And for me, like, actually, like, I didn't really know much about that, but if what this book is saying is true, then it is really, it's really sad. It is just kind of it's very sad. It is a very sad book. It gets sad and it gets worse and it just keeps getting worse, but it is hopeful. It is in its core, it's a hopeful book, and it's incredible. I really, really, really love this book. When I was reading it, I was like, this is great. And then I finished it and I was like, wow, it's amazing. I really liked it. I've seen some people on Goodreads, which I don't go on anymore, who are like dunking on this book, but I liked it. I really liked it. I thought it was a really interesting look at something I didn't know much about personally. And, white boy me talking about that. So, I picked this up at the thrift store for like $2 because I found it there, and I was like, dude, I love the book. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna buy it, and so I have it now. So I can hold it here and tell you that it's amazing. It follows the two girls in Afghanistan. One of them is about an adult, while the other is like a 16-year-old kind of, and it just shows how like surreal it can kind of be of just these people losing their rights completely, especially women. Well, that's what a lot of the book focuses on, is women just having zero rights, zero nothing, no respect from anybody, from the government, just evil, very, very, very evil, twisted stuff, really messed up, treated terribly, and it sticks with you. I mean, it stuck with me, and it's really sad, but it is amazing, and it has something to say. It's not sad and bleak at points simply to be bleak. It is very obviously saying something and painting a picture of what Afghanistan is like, being a citizen, being a person there, living through all of that, all of the war, all of the terrible things going on. And it's great. It's really, really good book. I highly recommend it. It sounds interesting to you. It is Don't go in it expecting to come out happy, because it left me freaking sad while I was reading it. Really sad while I was reading it, and like a week afterwards. But damn, it's great. This book is amazing. Okay, we are on to, where are we at? June. June was a short one. I only read one book in June, and that is because I was reading Moby Dick. We'll get to that later. What I read in June, though, is so good. It is such a freaking good book. This is also one of my favorites, by Mark Twain. Same guy who wrote Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Amazing. This is a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. This book is almost funnier than Huckleberry Finn. In some aspects, I think it champs Huckleberry Finn in the humor and the wittiness of the writing, the cleverness. This was written about 10 years after Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain, a lot of his family died. He had some kids, they died. I think his wife died. And so he kind of got cynical, really cynical, halfway through this book, and you can tell, and it's still really good. Okay. Let me explain, because the premise alone, in my opinion, is probably, like, it just speaks for itself kind of deal. But it is basically about a man from the 19th century, like a factory, American Yankee, one could say, like a real American. He is in about the 1800s, really late 1800s, so close to the 1900s, industrial work. He works in a factory. That's the main character. He gets hit on the head with a crowbar, and he wakes up in 400 AD. So about, I don't know, 1200, I'm not good at math. Wait. Yeah. 1,200 years in the past. So he wakes up in medieval times and is picked up and is dropped off in King Arthur's court by a knight. That is the premise of the book. He is the dude from the 1900s, or 19th century, thrown back in medieval times, like 400 AD. The dates are probably wrong. And basically, the idea of this book is that he tries to convert like the medieval times into the 1900s. And it's really good. It goes in crazy places, a lot of things you wouldn't expect. This guy, literally within the first 30 pages, becomes equivalent to the king of King Arthur's realm, and his title is the boss. It's so good. I don't know how else to say it. Merlin is in it. And it is one of those like satirical, historical comedy things where the more you know about medieval times, the funnier this book is. And even if you don't, it's still great. Just the idea of this man being in the medieval times and like building warships it still makes me excited when I think about it. I love this book. Definitely one of my favorites, period. As I was reading it, I had such a blast. There's a portion of this book which stinks, and it's kind of in the beginning. It's this side plot with this girl called Sandy. It's terrible. It is like the worst part of the book. But everything else is immaculate. It tries to do so much, and you know what? It fails at a lot of it too. But that's what makes it so good, in my opinion. I think it has such balls to just go out there and try these like nutty concepts. It throws a bunch of stuff at the wall, and a decent chunk of it doesn't exactly stick. But that just adds to the kind of the whimsical silliness of this book. It goes from goofy and sad to heart-wrenching in the flick of a finger. I'm at a loss for words here. It's so funny. It's not even just that. It's just clever. It's witty. It's Mark Twain. I love Mark Twain. I'm a little Mark Twain boy. But this book was so good. My brother recommended it to me, and is the best recommendation, period, that I think I've ever read. That's probably not true. But, man, check this book out, please. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. It is really, really good. I still think about this book a lot just because of how fun it is. And it also covers some big topics of, like religion, trying to convert societies to what we consider the present and modern. It's so good. I could yap about this book for hours. I love this book a ton. Okay, next. Now, I read that book, and then I started Moby Dick. We're in July now. But I got really tired because Moby Dick's long. So I read The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. This book was shit. I don't know how else to say it. I didn't like this, and I know the Hemingway fans, the Old Man and the Sea fans are going to be out for me. But I didn't like it. I'd heard of this book before. I saw it. It was in my girlfriend's bathroom. It was just kind of there. So I was like, you know what? Let me give it a crack. It is kind of aquatic related, like Moby Dick, which I will get to next. And why not? It is about a dude chasing a fish. That's it. That's the whole book. That's all there is to it. And you cannot convince me that there's anything deeper about this book. That's all. It's a dude chasing a fucking fish. I just don't care. It's just about a dude chasing a fish. It is a guy in a boat chasing a merlin for about 100 pages. He finds a merlin. He catches it. He gets dragged by the merlin because his hook is in the merlin and he's in his little rowboat. He gets dragged out to the middle of the sea. Spoiler alert. He gets the merlin. The merlin dies. Sharks eat it up. He comes back. That's it. That's the whole book. And I was seeing reviews on this like, it is the meaning of life. It is this. No, it is not. It's a guy catching a stupid fish. I'm sorry. It's kind of inoffensive because it's so short and the prose is so simple, but I'm not a fan of the quote-unquote Hemingway writing style, which is these short sentences, and it's like, oh, read between the lines. Dude, there is nothing between the lines. It is empty. It is empty. That is it. Oh, I'm sorry. I get heated about Old Man and the Sea sometimes because I can't find what other people have, I guess. I don't know. If you're an Old Man and the Sea fan, I'm happy for you. I really am. Yeah, not for me. Really not. I don't want to read really any other Ernest Hemingway. This book made me not really want to. I heard some people say that the fish and the old man's struggle represents humans, like man's discipline and kind of will to continue at really, really, really hard things. And yeah, I could see that, but I've seen it done and displayed so much more eloquently before than this book, where it doesn't do it for me. I can't. It's not my thing. I'm sorry. I'm not an Old Man and the Sea fan. I'm gonna pass on Old Man and the Sea. At least it was short. I do have to say I read it in like a day, so I mean it wasn't that offensive. Okay. The next book we have here is possibly one of my most opinionated reads ever. This is a book that a lot of people have strong opinions about. And so do I. I have pretty strong opinions about this book now. Moby Dick. Moby Dick. It is about a whale, and it has the funny word in the title. Okay, I'm sorry. It is about Ishmael, this dude Ishmael. He goes boating. This is quote-unquote an American classic. And he goes to find a Captain A. Okay, let me restart. This dude Ishmael goes on a boating trip to just go whaling, to hunt whales. This is in like the 1800s, before it was banned, and when whales were, huge and whale hunting was at its peak. They almost, spoiler alert, whales almost went extinct because they hunted so many. That's not what the book is about. I mean, in one way or another, it covers that a little bit, but the book is about Captain Ahab, who's the captain of this whaling crew, and he wants to get vengeance on this particular white whale, which has been named Moby Dick. This whale bit off his leg, and now he's like, I'm pissed off and I want to get this whale and we're killing it. That's the premise of the book. I didn't know going into this that 50% of the book is whale anatomy, which might add is inaccurate. I looked it up. It's inaccurate apparently. So, oh my god. I could talk about how much this book made me suffer reading the whole thing. It is about 600 pages and the font is mini. The font is diabolically small. This book sent me on, and I actually almost believed that books could not be good after I read this. I disliked this book so much. I got afraid that there was no such thing as a good book, and that I would never be able to read a good book ever again. I'm going to have to take a break because my camera's overheating, and then I'll continue talking about Moby Dick. I'm reading the back right now. It says, "It is the greatest sea story ever told." If this is the greatest sea story ever told, then I don't know if I want to read a sea story again. This book was hell incarnate to read. It is insanely difficult to read just because of the Old English alone, which this book was written in 1851. This is an old book. But also the author, Herman Melville, his prose is very, very flowery. I have to give him credit. His prose is beautiful. I have a love-hate relationship with this book because on one hand, I hated reading it. I genuinely hated reading it about 90% of the time because this is the formula for the book. Good chapter about the plot. And then a chapter about whale anatomy. Half the book, it like flip-flops between the plot and whale anatomy. By the end of the book, you know literally the entirety of whale anatomy. And I don't need to know, I don't need to know whale anatomy that much. I don't care that much. I didn't want to know that much. And this book is indulgent. I didn't know it would be when I went in, but it was. So the book went over from literal, like, the outer layer you can't see of the blubber to the bone, to the processing, every part of the whale, every part of the whaling process. I didn't need to know that. I didn't, and I don't care to know it. But now I do. And that is Moby Dick. And then there's a whole chapter that talks about the whiteness of the whale. And I'm like, why? Why is this in here? But at the same time, it's so beautiful, I can't even be that mad about it. This is one of those books that this book took forever. This book genuinely took so long to read because it's huge. It's a big book. It doesn't look like it with my little small copy here, but the font is so tiny. I could not read more than 17 pages in one sitting, period. Even that was insanely challenging. Moby Dick was hard to read. It was brutal to read. I hated reading it, and I was a happy guy when I was done reading this book. I don't want to read it again. I really have a feeling when I get older, in like 10 years, I'd reread Moby Dick and I'd really like it, which kind of scares me, but I know myself enough, and I feel like that's the case. Why is my camera? That's my situation with Moby Dick. I hate Moby Dick. I hate it. Moby shit. Like, I don't like it. There's a diary entry. I would write out journal sometimes in this notebook. And there's one entry that I was rereading like a few weeks ago, and it still makes me giggle because it was talking about how I was like having such a bad time. I'm so stressed. And then there's just this sentence in there: Moby Dick is shit, and it's pissing me off. And it's just, to me, that's funny. I don't know about you, but to me, that's funny. Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. I look at Moby Dick and I get angry. I get pissed off when I look at Moby Dick. Captain Ahab is hyped up in this book for no apparent reason. I genuinely I don't see it. People are like, oh, Ahab's the greatest, craziest, coolest character. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's just like, he's kind of crazy. He's just a guy. Like, there's nothing that special about this book besides Herman Melville's way of writing something very beautiful, which he can do. He can write a really beautiful passage about something you would otherwise think nothing of. Other than that, I'm good. I hated Moby Dick. I still do. I cannot stand this book. If you like it, I'm happy for you. But if you don't want to hear about whale anatomy, then don't read the book, because 50% of the book is whale anatomy and not even the plot. And the plot's okay when it's actually doing it, but even then, it's not that good. So that's Moby Dick for you. Yeah, I guess you could tell I wasn't a huge fan of Moby Dick. Okay, next one. Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. This is the same guy who wrote Journey to the Center of the Earth. He is a Frenchman. This book was fun. It was fun. It's just about a guy making a bet that he can go around the world in 80 days. This takes place in the 1800s, and it was written in the 1800s. It was written 1873. It's good. It's good. It's fun. It's not exactly my thing. I wasn't like enthralled with it by the end, but it's kind of a fun adventure book of this guy trying to go around the world in 80 days and his adventures on the way. It's this calculated Englishman with this French dude, passeporteur. I don't know how to say it. I'm not French. Passeporteur. I don't know how to say it, but his assistant's pretty funny, dude. And then there's a cop chasing him the whole time because they think that he is a robber. They think he's a criminal. It's pretty fun. It's pretty short. It's about 160 pages. I mean, the font is pretty small. I love these like Bantam Classic ones because they have really compact books. Like the Moby Dick book was nice and compact. Same with this one. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I will say I enjoyed it. It was fun, and yeah, and not my favorite thing in the world, but it was a solid little fun read. Good break from Moby Dick. Probably shouldn't have read something so old for Moby Dick, but yeah, it's good. Okay, we made it to August. This is 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is the best science fiction book I've ever read. I used to pretty much read like only like young adult books. A lot of them were kind of science fiction-y. This book surpassed my expectations in so many ways. In my opinion, this is what Dune should have been. The book, at least. The scale. I don't know how a book does this so beautifully. It illustrates the scale of things in a different. It's like a different freaking beast. The way it illustrates scale in this is immaculate. I had watched the movie version of this when I was really young, and I hated it because as like a kid, I was like 7 when I watched it, and it was boring as crap to me. The book, though, I remember I was like, I feel like I'd like it as a book. It's so good. The beginning of the book takes place from a prehistoric like monkey's POV, and it is literally like first person. Well, not first person, but it's like what the monkey is thinking, and like kind of like narrated through the monkey, which is so cool to me. That was mind-boggling when I was reading this because I forgot everything that happened in the movie. But this book is basically its explanation. It's like a possible like theory is the idea of it of why we've never met aliens. Insanely amazing book. I loved every second of this book. It was so good. It was so good. The prose in this thing is amazing. The characters are about as 2D as you can get, but it doesn't matter. It genuinely does not matter. Like, I do not care about David Bowman most of the book. I just don't. But that's not the point, because it feels like it's about something so much larger, and it illustrates that beautifully. I watched the movie. No, I'm good. I'm sorry. I know people love that movie. It sucks. It genuinely stinks. It is slow. It is boring. And the book does it so much better, especially the ending. The book is way more concrete in the ending. The movie has this very abstract, very like, does not tell you crap about what's happening. You just have to guess. I don't know how you're supposed to figure it out at all from the movie. The book explains it more, and I think the way the book does it is way better. I enjoyed it so much more. The cinematography in the movie is amazing. I have to say. The cinematography is beautiful. The scale is there. It's very, very, very cool. But the book simply did everything better. I don't know how to explain it, but the book did everything better. And I think the movie adaptation is sorely... Nah. I don't like Stanley Kubrick movies. That's just the theme here, I guess. I'm not a Stanley Kubrick kind of guy. It was so long. It was so slow. Not even just it being slow. It just wasn't nearly as good as the book. I just didn't like it much. I'm going to be honest. The movie is completely overrated, and it is not that good, especially when this thing is sitting right here. The book is sitting right here. Okay, I'm sorry. The book is it's so good. I can't get over how great this book is. I love it. Be like amazing science fiction, especially if you want a book that can get the scale of planets and different planets and like interplanetary exploration and a really interesting and like not cliche take on aliens. Super good, man. Super good. Okay. I had such a fun time reading this. It like brought me back to reading after Moby Dick. This book is amazing. So beautiful one. Alrighty. Okay. Still on August here. We have Blood Meridian. If you read books and are on YouTube, this is like the YouTube lit bro book, kind of like there's the Wendigoon video on it, which is what everyone knows it from, and it's like most people have just watched his video on it and haven't actually read the book. Anyways, I had heard about this book from Man Carrying Thing, which I love his channel. I watch like all of his videos. Man Carrying Thing, I said it was one of his favorites. I heard a lot of people talk about this book, and I knew Wendigoon had made about a 5-hour video on it, and so I was like, dude, with how much people talk about this book. And I saw Jared something. He's a YouTuber. whatever. He liked it too. And I'd heard a lot about Cormac McCarthy. He wrote The Road. The author of Cormac McCarthy, he wrote The Road. And I was like, you know what? This book is always hyped up, talked about so much. Let me read it. It sounds pretty interesting. There's so much internet hype. And I want to write a passage to watch the Wendigoon video. So I was like, I'm going to actually read it and then watch it. So I can be like, yeah, I read Blood Meridian. And I did. It is a hard read. I will say that. If you're going to read Cormac McCarthy, don't start with Blood Meridian. Just don't. It's not a good place to start whatsoever. People had recommended that, and I did not believe them. And I was like, I'm going to start with Blood Meridian anyway. And then I did. And I think I would have enjoyed it better if I didn't. But I still think Blood Meridian is great. I think it's a really, really good book. In my opinion, it is Moby Dick done right. People say it is a spiritual successor to Moby Dick, and I have to agree with them. I feel like it is. To me, this is what I was expecting Moby Dick to be. It just simply is. It is a brutal Western, takes place in the 1850s, and it is about the scalp hunters and this gang called the Glanton Gang, which is a real gang, going out and killing Indians, cutting their scalps off for money. That is what it's about. It's about the depravity of man and how, it's called Blood Meridian. Meridian means border, blood, border, or blood. End of the day. There's a lot of PM, post-meridian, if that makes any sense, is what PM stands for when people say it's 5:57 PM. I didn't know that till I looked it up when I was going to read this book. It's good. It's not enjoyable to read at all. I will say that, which Moby Dick wasn't either, but this one felt like it paid off. Reading it is not fun. It's not entertaining. It's not, it is at some points, but that's not the point of this book. It is not meant to be entertaining. It's not meant for a blast or to be, super fun and witty. It is meant to tell you something, and it is meant to describe and articulate a certain aspect and bloodiness of man. And that's what it does. And I think it does it very, very well. In some regards, No Country for Old Men, which Cormac McCarthy also wrote, I think it covers some of those themes better in certain regards, but I still do think Blood Meridian I think it is great. It is definitely one of those books that the more you think about it, the better it gets kind of deal. You're not reading it and like, wow, this is so fun to read. It's great because it's profound kind of a deal. It's not necessarily made to be enjoyable or to have a fun time reading it. It's meant to tell you something and tell you kind of in a beautiful, potent way. And that's what this book does. People describe it as being very violent, and it is, but I do have to say it was not as violent as I was expecting. The way people were describing this book being the most violent, bloody thing they've ever read, it didn't live up to my expectations in that regard. The violence is surreal in this book. I heard Man Carrying Things say this, and I agree with it. The violence is very surreal. It's very dreamlike, and I'm just copying his take here, I'm sorry. But it does very much feel detached in a certain way. You're reading it, and something very bad and bloody is happening, and you almost don't really... You're kind of insensitive to it. And I think that's intentional. Nonetheless, it still doesn't hit like that, which I think some of Cormac's other books do more so pack a punch where it really makes you disgusted at the violence and depravity of human beings. But I think Blood Meridian is setting out to do a little more of a nuanced take, more of a dreamy take on it. The main character is a 14-year-old kid who was part of this intense violence. I couldn't imagine being part of it, and definitely not when I was 14. So if it sounds interesting to you, it's very kind of spiritual. It has religious references and whatnot, religious allusions, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a religious book. It's not like trying to convert you or anything. That's not the message of it. But it has religious themes and a kind of biblical writing style, which is a good way to put it. There was some quote on the back of the book, but it does almost feel biblically written with how the prose is. But that's also Cormac McCarthy in general. But it is very much potent here. This book is one of those that is marinated inside of me, and I read it at first and I was like, yeah, pretty good. Not really my thing. I still don't think it's necessarily my thing, but it doesn't, like, to me, I'm aware of that, and I can understand that it is still a phenomenal book despite that fact. Because the more I've thought about it, the better it has gotten to me. It takes place in Mexico, a little bit of Texas, and there's quite a bit of history around it, which I won't get into because there's so many videos you can watch about this. Pretty much everything there is to say about this book has been said on the internet. I am definitely going to reread this at some point. Again, if this at all sounds interesting to you, I would really suggest reading a different one of Cormac McCarthy's books first. Any of them, probably one of his more popular ones, which this has become. But this is just a really hard place to start with Cormac McCarthy, and I don't think it is going to be enjoyable if you're not used to Cormac McCarthy's prose, because he doesn't punctuate. He only uses periods, and he has very short sentences, but then he'll have very long run-on sentences that last almost a full page of just, and he saw this, and it swirled, and and it's has a cadence to it that's hard to follow at some points. It's like, kind of like a rhythm you can't get used to. That's what it feels like starting a Cormac McCarthy book. And eventually, you start to realize, every now and then, there's still a part where you'll reread it and you still don't understand what the actual hell is happening. That was me a lot of this book. I think if I read it now, I've read a decent bit of Cormac McCarthy's books after reading this one, and already I can understand this one better, just because his style is very potent, and you'll know immediately if you ever try to read his books. There's no commas, there's no, like, quotations when there's people having dialogue, and so that is can really throw you off. Still, great book. I had $1 bill as my bookmark for this book, which I think is kind of funny. Okay, we're in August now. Wait, I think we're in August. Wait, we might be in September still. No, we might be in August still. Wait, what am I talking about? No, we're in September. Okay, September. This is when school started again. So, a lot of these books were in the summer. Every Connecticut Yankee through Blood Meridian was summertime. I finished Blood Meridian like the first week of school. We have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. We read this book for school. It's good. I do have to say it was good. While I was reading it, I really enjoyed it. I actually went a little nerd mode, and I actually liked the book so much. I literally read the whole thing over the next 3 days, and I finished it early. After reading it, though, I do have to say there is some huge, huge flaws with this book that makes me not like it as much as I did when I was reading it. It is an enjoyable read. You can fly through it. It's easy to read. It's entertaining. It's engaging. It's very sad at points, and I really enjoyed that. It felt quite like 1,000 Splendid Suns, but there is some major faults in this book that, like, when I talked to other people about it, I realized there were some big things in here that were kind of just like huge plot points. I felt like they were just kind of done for a shock factor, and for me, looking back, the writing can kind of flail, and there was a lot of missed opportunities with this book. I still think it's a pretty solid, and it's a good book. It's good. It's also Delia Owens' first book, which is, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's pretty impressive for a first book. Still, I think there's some big enough flaws that that push me back from liking this book as much as I could have. Overall, I enjoyed it, but I'm wary with this book. I still did like it though. I had a fun time reading it. There was some things where I was like, okay, this is a little weird. The messages and what they're trying to say here felt a little off, and I thought it was, you could tell that the author who wrote this had an unsolved case in which she was the prime suspect for a murder. So if that interests you, I mean, the book relates to that. It's about a girl who is the main suspect and basically framed for the murder. The blame is put on her for the murder of this the town's dude, the town's jock, pretty much. They're their golden boy, Chase Andrews, and pretty much this girl, her whole family leaves her. It's really depressing, and she grows up in the marsh, kind of, and she goes up on her own, just like get tough, da da da. It's entertaining, it's good, and you can tell it's heartfelt at points, but it does have some flaws to it. She's basically the murder of this dude, the death of this dude, is pinned onto her, and that's what the book's about. So it's pretty good, but I mean, I liked it so much. I read it outside of school time, so I mean that's big for me. But you know, there's some faults there. There's some faults in that book that I can't ignore, and once were brought to my attention, I was like, oh, I can't exactly love the book as much as I did when I was reading it. Okay, next up we have Wuthering Heights. I swear it's not a romance book. I swear it's not what it looks like, okay? I don't know why this book is always marketed as being like super romance based and like they're in love and like, you know, like, oh my gosh, they're kissing. The book is not like that. Like, there is a romance, but it's twisted and it's not happy. It doesn't there needs to be some prefaces, okay? I had Wuthering Heights on my list because man carrying thing. Yeah, I know. I'm like a little man carrying thing simp. But he had recommended it, and I was like, yeah, it sounds interesting, kind of. So I put it on my list of books to read, and then my girlfriend bought it for me while she was on vacation. I was like, oh, thank you. And so now I was like, well, I don't have a choice. I read it. I will read it now. I have to read it. It's good. It's good. When I was reading it, I was like, it's not my cup of tea, not my thing, but I can totally understand why people really like this book. And I'm down with it. You know, like I mess with it. It's good. It's good, but not exactly my thing. It has kind of that classic feel to it. It was written in 1847. It is very old. It is somehow very readable, and especially for a classic, extremely well paced. This book, you always think it might start to slow down, but it doesn't. At other points, I think classics most definitely would, at least from my experience. And it's surprisingly easy to read for how old it is compared to other stuff. I mean, this copy I have is like, the font takes up like the whole page. But man, it's solid. It's very solid. When I first read it, I couldn't understand why people liked it so much. I was like, I like it, but I don't love it like all these other people do. But after like months of marinating, this book just gets better the more I think about it. It is about vengeance, and it is about family hatred, family kind of feuds passing on to generations below. There is some romance in here, but it's not good. It's a romance where both people are hurt by it, and the romance makes both of the people worse people. It is not a romance book really at all. There's a huge shift halfway through the book, and that caught me off guard, and I thought was super interesting. It is gothic. It gets surprisingly dark, especially for a book with this cover. This cover does not portray the book whatsoever, and people telling it's a romance book are wrong. It is simply not. It is a history of families, and it is a pretty nuanced take on like hatred towards people, kind of smart and evil people who are selfish. It is a lot of this book. The two like characters are hateable. They suck. I don't like them. Like, no, when you're reading it, no one is mostly rooting for Heathcliff or for Catherine, the two characters in this book, the lovers or whatever. They're not good people especially when they're with each other. They're not good people. This is a pretty solid read, though. If this sounds interesting to you, I recommended this to my mom because I genuinely think my mom would like this book. So she's gonna read this one. But yeah, it was a lot better than I thought it would be. It is a classic. Can be hard to read, especially if you haven't read classics before. But it's surprisingly modern. If it sounds interesting to you, then yeah, go for it. I'd say it's pretty good. It's definitely one of those books that grows on you over time. When I first read it, I was like, it's all right, nothing special. And then the more I think about it, I'm like, wow, that actually did a lot of things really well that other books have fallen short on. It is kind of, you can definitely understand why it's a classic, and I can see how it paved the way for a lot of other books. Okay, my camera battery's gonna die, so I'm taking another break. Yeehaw. Okay, so it's the next day. Anyways, we are still in September, and we are on Butcher's Crossing. Butcher's Crossing. I'm gonna be real. The only reason I know about this book, and oh, look at that. I love Western Mountains so much. Hello, focus, focus. I don't know. I think that's pretty. Basically, I found out about this book through Man Carrying Thing. I know I talked about him before, dude. I'm like a Man Carrying Thing little simp. That's me. But he had made like a hour long video about this, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Uh, but I wanted to read like actually read the book before I watched the video. So I did, and the video was good, but the book was good. It wasn't exactly as good as I thought it was gonna be. I remember I found out about it through a really old video, not even an hour long one, where he was talking about how it was like one of his favorite books or whatever, and basically going over like how like kind of tragic it was. And it's like, dude, that sounds hype. I want to read that. It is about buffalo hunting. It's about the 1870s buffalo hunting during like the kind of westward expansion kind of deal. You know, just going over the west and slaughtering every buffalo in sight. Yeah, but basically, Americans, we kind of suck. So we went and we killed all of the buffalo and these huge buffalo hunting squadrons, if you could call them that. Basically, we went around hunting buffalo because people wanted buffalo hide. It was like a huge fad at the time. And people loved buffalo. And so this book is about this kid, this kind of like lit bro, let's be real. Now, he's like this college student who's like, I want to find myself in nature and all that good stuff. And so basically, he goes out, he gets together a buffalo hunting crew, and he goes out to this spot that this man Miller has found. And he's like, we're going to see if there's still buffalo here. And I'm going to try to find myself in the West, hunting buffalo. And the book is kind of a criticism of this philosophy that nature is pure and, well, I guess, no, it's a philosophy of this romanticization of nature and thinking that it can kind of solve all your problems and it's the way to find who you are. And it's kind of showing like, no, nature is indifferent. It can be beautiful and it can be terrible all at the same time. It can be like violent. It's indifferent. It is its own force, and it's wise to kind of know, I'm not wording this correctly, but it's wise to understand the dangers nature does have present, and the main character has to learn this the hard way. It is good. I do have to say, like, thinking back on it, it's pretty good. I read it in 3 days, just about. It's not too long. It's about 300 pages. 270 pages, reasonable font on this copy. But I enjoyed it. It wasn't necessarily my thing. I didn't love it. I didn't think it was as tragic as people said it was. Maybe that's because my expectations were higher. I didn't think it was as good as I thought I was going to like it. It is concise. I will say that. The author, John Williams, not the composer who made the Star Wars music, different guy, author. He wrote this book called Stoner, which people say is great, so I should probably read that. Anyways, he is super to the point, which I really, really, really admire about an author. He does not waste time. I thought the book was going to dilly-dally a lot in the beginning. It really doesn't. It tells you what needs to be told, and that's it. It does not waste your time, which I really appreciate. Apparently, he had this philosophy that, reader is always first, and you're paying for a book, so it should be good. It shouldn't waste your time. And I respect that a lot. So honestly, this book just made me respect the author. It makes me kind of want to read Stoner. So yeah, I thought it was good. Had some interesting themes, but not necessarily my cup of tea, one could say. Okay, next up, we have the famous, one could say, the prodigal on Writing by Stephen freaking King. Okay, I have to put a disclaimer on this because this is one of the most important, probably, oh man, yeah, this is definitely one of the most important books I read this year. I had never read a Stephen King book before, period. I was like, I knew he made It, I knew he made a whole bunch of horror books, and I just thought he was a horror author, kind of, and my view on him was like, I don't know, his books, like, people say he's great, but I just thought it was one of those cases where everyone else would be able to like him and I wouldn't. And so I just never read Stephen King because I was kind of like, eh. He felt like this mainstream author that people just love, and I was like, there's no way he could be good. I don't know why. I just thought he couldn't be good. I saw him as like this drug addict from the 80s who just wrote these nutty, crazy books that like people liked for some reason, even though they were really twisted. But I'd heard people praise on writing, and I was like, for a guy who has sold as many books as Stephen King, has written as many books as Stephen King, because if you didn't know, Stephen King has written like a unholy large amount of books, like more than any man should be capable of writing. So pretty much, I was like, he probably has a thing or two to say about on writing, and some people who say some very intelligent things online all recommended this book, and so I was like, dude, I gotta read it. Like, I have to read it. It just writing interests me. The idea of writing interests me. I had been writing a little on and off when I read this book, and if you are even interested in the slightest in writing or the process of it, this book, you simply must read the book. I sound like a 1900s salesman, but you simply must. You simply must try this new medicine. No, it's so good. It is so good. I am not even being dramatic when I say this book single-handedly got me writing the book I'm writing right now. I'm writing a novel. There's going to be videos about it soon, so if you're interested in that, look forward to it, because I'm going to be making videos about writing the book. But, man, this just lit a fire under my freaking butt cheeks, man. Like, it got me going. It, like, is super kind of brass tacks, like, this is what you need to do, which is advice that I don't see anywhere. Like, I really haven't seen advice this applicable, this realistic, and also kind of taking away the curtain of mystique around writing. It's simpler than it appears on the surface. It's not easy, but the simple fact is writing is simply writing, and that's what this book is telling you about. He goes over almost an autobiographical period of his life, which is just wonderful to read, just a blast. I had so much fun reading it. Completely changed my view on Stephen King. You could tell it's such a personal book. It feels like you are just having a conversation with this chill dude, and it's amazing. It's really amazing. I love this book. I need to buy it. This is the library copy. This book is incredible. Genuinely, if you were even thinking about getting writing, read this book. You will not regret it. I guarantee you. Honestly, I don't feel like I ever need to read writing advice again. No, I'm kidding. But man, even just the book is in multiple chunks. There's the I guess the autobiography. It's just called CV, which goes over kind of his life up until this point. And just from that alone, you just get so much. Even just about writing, you get so much. For me, so much inspiration, so much just like, this is possible. You know, it talks about him, Stephen King, like just putting rejection letters on a nail over and over, submitting for years and just stacking up his rejection letters on this nail on his wall. And something about it is just so like, it just makes the idea of writing so fun. And it also makes it feel so possible. This book makes writing feel tangible. It makes it, for me, it made me realize I could write if I wanted to, and now I am. I mean, I'm 90,000 words into the book I'm writing, and it may or may not be good, but whether or not, this book got me writing the book. And I'm going to adore it for that, for forever. Like, I cannot recommend this book more to anyone who is even slightly interested in writing. Even if you're just interested in Stephen King. If you're a Stephen King fan, then read this book, because it is a really, really good look into his life. And it made me want to read like all of his books. After reading this, I was like, dude, I have to read Stephen King. I have to. I can't not read Stephen King. And so I did. I read Stephen King. Let me check the list, because I think I'm off on the months. I mean, that was a Stephen King book, but I read one of his fiction novels. I forgot to say, this is nonfiction. This is nonfiction, so keep that in mind. Okay, we're still in September here. So I had heard about this book for a bit. I had heard the first few lines in a main character thing video. I need to stop, dude. I need to stop. I'm exposing myself over here. And I thought it was super cool, the opening lines of this book. This is a Stephen King book. And there's some context I want to say before. Basically, the book I'm writing is a small. I don't want this to be too much about the book I'm writing. It's about the books I'm reading, but it plays a role. Basically, the book I read is Misery. Okay, Misery by Stephen King. I had heard this book. The book is simple. The premise is very simple. This man, Paul Sheldon, is in a car accident. He breaks his legs, and this crazy lady, Annie Wilkes, takes him and forces him to be her pet writer. She's a huge fan of the writer, and she forces him to stay in her little cabin and write a sequel to a novel, one of his best-selling novels. It's literally incredible. This book is so good. I finished it in 5 days. I just burnt through it like a crisp. It's about 500, no, not 500, 350 pages. I mean, it's a decently chunky read, but man, it was so worth it. It was so worth it. I read this book because the idea I had for my book only has 3 characters in it, really. And so I was like, it felt like a similar vibe to what people were describing Misery as. So I was like, I should read Misery to see how, I mean, an author like Stephen King, which I was already beginning to like a ton from on writing. I was like, let's see how he pulls it off. Just having 2 characters in one room, the whole book. The whole book takes place in one room, which is nuts. Because it stays entertaining, it stays amazing, it is immaculate. It is genuinely one of the best books I've ever read. So good. Stephen King has a way of really feeling like you are just sitting in a room with him, listening to this man tell you a great story. He really gets into the mind of the main character, Paul Sheldon. You feel like you are in this man's thoughts. And it's just done so eloquently. It's done beautifully. It can be funny at times in really odd ways. His prose it was hard for me to get used to, I'm not going to lie, because it does feel almost too casual at points that you're like, whoa, this is hard. Like, this is a little crazy because of just how casual, I guess. I'm used to, when people praise books, the prose to be very serious and formal and kind of beautifully eloquent, and Stephen King is. But he can also be casual. He's not afraid to be casual, to be kind of open, just be chill like that, I guess. A really poor way of describing it. But it does not take away from the beauty of his writing. And just, man, powerful scenes that this book left me with. When I was reading it, I really enjoyed it. But I didn't realize how good it was until I finished it. And I was thinking about it. And then I realized, crap, this book is incredibly good. Like, insanely good. Just even the title itself, it has a lot of meaning for the book. This book is about misery. It's about suffering. It is about fighting like inner battles. Apparently, I mean, in own writing, apparently this represented, or at least he wrote this when he had a cocaine addiction, and he basically described it as not the author, Annie Wilkes forcing Paul to write was the equivalent of him and his relationship with drugs, that alone adds a lot to this book and makes it so much more personal and interesting. And this book feels personal. I mean, the main character is a writer. It doesn't get much more, personal than that. But fully recommend. If you like Stephen King and you haven't read this book, pick it up. You will love it. There is no shot that you won't like this book. It is violent. There's some pretty gruesome scenes in it. It's not violent the whole time, but it does have it has some psychological horror. That's mostly the horror it is. For me, it didn't scare me so much as it just fascinated me and interested me. There is a few gruesome scenes that really do stick with you when you read this book. But man, great book. I reread the beginning like a few weeks ago just because he pulls off some amazing stuff. I mean, really, there's no reason not to read this book. It is so good. I absolutely love Misery. I'm a little Misery fan, if you couldn't tell. Freaking amazing 10 out of 10 book. I love this book so much. Okay. Next up, we are in... What are we in? We're in October. We're getting closer. Um, the more I, the deeper into the year I read, the more books I read per month. I started reading a lot more. September alone, I mean, you guys could tell I read 5 books in September. October, I also read 5 books. So bear with me. December is the longest. I read about six books in December. So there is, even though we're at the end of the year here, we still got a good bit of books to go over. So bear with me. I'm sorry. This video turned out extremely long, way longer than I thought it was going to. But I'm a pro yapper, I guess. Okay, first book of October, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer, baby. Because I read Huckleberry Finn. I loved Huckleberry Finn. And then I read A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. And I love that book too. So why not read Tom Sawyer? Because Mark Twain, I love Mark Twain. I'm going to be completely upfront. Some people might dunk on me for this, but I think Huckleberry Finn is infinitely better than Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer's fun. It's good. It's fun. I had an enjoyable time reading it, but man, it just doesn't compare to Huckleberry Finn. I don't know how else to say it. To me, Huckleberry Finn, the pure cleverness, the craziness of it, the situations they got into, they were just more fun. They were better. I think Tom Sawyer is great as a lead up to it. I think if it sounds interesting to start with Huckleberry, you can't really go wrong with it. But I didn't realize how basically Tom Sawyer ends exactly where Huckleberry begins. They are one almost continuous story. And I think Tom Sawyer works great in that regard because I guess you could say like the height of nuttiness that Tom Sawyer gets to is the baseline for Huckleberry Finn. So Huckleberry Finn starts off with the heights of this book. The highest highs of this book are the lowest lows of Huckleberry Finn, in my opinion. Tom Sawyer as a character, I simply was annoyed by him. I couldn't like him, and I would get annoyed at him. I'm like, this dude is such a brat. He's such a little brat, and I don't like him at all. And he's so annoying. When Tom Sawyer was in Huckleberry Finn, I was so annoyed. I almost didn't want to finish Huckleberry Finn because Tom Sawyer was so freaking annoying. I was like, I don't want to read about this stupid kid. Let me read about Huck. And it felt the same in here. Tom is this little freaking manipulator kid who just, little brat kid. I don't know. It's quite clear that he's supposed to be immature, which is it's not hidden. Mark Twain's pretty upfront about it, but that's not a fault of the book. That's just my personal gripe with Tom Sawyer as a character. But it's fun. It has some fun adventures. Definitely not very plot-based. It is extremely episodic. Huckleberry is episodic too, but it has a plot. It does follow, I think, a little more closely than Tom Sawyer. But I thought it was solid. Definitely, I guess, fell flat in my expectations. I think I'd set too high of expectations for this because I heard some people say this is better than Huckleberry, which is false. That is just simply false information. But good. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. It's Mark Twain. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Definitely still prefer Huckleberry by a long shot. Okay. Next up, we have 2010 Odyssey 2 by Arthur C. Clarke. This is the sequel to 2001 A Space Odyssey. I bought this bad boy on eBay, which is why it is a little destroyed. But I have a little bit to say about this book. I loved 2001 so much. I genuinely cannot express how great that book is. So I won't talk about it anymore. But 2010 Odyssey 2, not as much of a fan. It definitely feels like Arthur C. Clarke's faults as a writer are more apparent, and they're not as excusable in this book. In 2001, the characters being 2D and paper thin, I could literally not care less because the grandeur and the simple magnitude and beauty of what was going on outweighed it. In this book, it was going for more character-based. There's an ensemble crew in this book, and I just don't think it works as well. I don't think it. I didn't feel attached to any of the characters. I wasn't that interested in the plot. It felt a lot of repeating what was going on in the first book, which irked me a little bit because the first book was very, very good at saying so little and that being just the right amount that needed to be said. I don't know if that makes any sense, but the first book would say so little, but that's what made it good. It would say just enough so that you knew it was happening, but not enough so that you knew too much, if that makes any sense. It kept a good mystery. And 2010 definitely wasn't trying to do that. It was trying to be more open about everything that happened in the first book. But to me, it felt like a repetition of a lot of the stuff that happened in the first book, and I just wasn't that for it. I thought I had understood well enough what happened in the first book, and I loved exactly how it ended, how everything went. And then this book felt like it was trying to go back and explain it, which I felt like took away from it, if that makes any sense. The plot is respectable. It's not necessarily my thing. It just didn't have that same grandeur as 2001. And I think I just personally didn't feel like there needed to be a sequel anyway. And so I wasn't crazy about this book. I finished it pretty quick. It was entertaining, but it wasn't really my thing. I don't think it lives up to 2001 and how great it is. Now, there is something that really annoyed me about this book, which I got over eventually, but while I was reading it, I was mad. Because the movie 2001 and the book of 2001 are different. They differ in some small and big ways. They're mostly the same, but there is different things that happen. 2010, the book, is a sequel to the movie, which was confusing to me because it was restating things that happened in the first one, but it was saying the movie version. And I was like, wait, that didn't happen in the book. Like, in the book, they go to Saturn. In the movie, they go to Jupiter. And then in the movie, they're like, oh, they went to Jupiter on the first trip. And I was like, that didn't happen in the book. That happened in the movie. And I was like, this is the book. This should be the sequel to the first book, not the movie. I get why he did it. You know, the movie was probably more popular than the book. It was a huge hit at the time. And so he was probably like more people would understand. And also he has openly said that all the sequels to 2001 are kind of their own pocket dimensions. So, I mean, yeah. But I mean, some of the coolest parts, in my opinion, about the first book were just gone because it followed the movie. And so that also didn't sit right with me exactly. It made me a little upset. But I'm kind of over it by this point. But I was really angry while I was reading that. I was like, oh, they changed it. Why would they do that? But, I mean, yeah. Pretty interesting, but I don't think it lives up to the first one. That's just my take. That's just my take. I think the first one is just so much better that, anything in comparison is just going to kind of fall flat. But yeah, that's 2010. Okay, next up here, I've mentioned it. Someone has texted me. My battery's overheating, so I will take a break. Okay, so for this next book, I didn't want to be called an incel for reading it, so I was going to wait until I lost my virginity, and then I realized if I waited that long, I would probably never read the book. So this is The Catcher in the Rye. There's a lot of talk about The Catcher in the Rye, but I mainly read it because I was told to read it, and I've just heard so much about it, I can't not read it. Even my aunt, she told me about this. She was like, oh, I hate Catcher in the Rye. But then I was talking to this kid at school, and they were like, I love Catcher in the Rye. So I read Catcher in the Rye. It gets a lot of crap. I have heard it does get a lot of junk about, the kid being annoying, the main character. And he is. But that's kind of the point. I don't know. This book I was a little conflicted about. It is one of those first person, it doesn't have a plot. It's just kind of stream of consciousness. And it is just about this kid in college who is not in a good mental spot, pretty much. It is pretty similar to Perks Being a Wallflower. I like Perks of the Wallflower, Perks Being Wallflower better, but I still think Catcher in the Rye is pretty solid. It is definitely not my favorite thing ever, but the more I think about the book, the more of the stuff in it I can start to apply to my own life, kind of. And I think that is a sign of some good stuff. When I realized this book actually has some merit when I was in the shower, and I was relating some parts of my life to The Catcher in the Rye. So it definitely has some good qualities. It is not about anything particularly. Well, there is themes it covers, but there's no plot, is what I mean. And main character goes on side tangents that you kind of realize or you kind of think don't really matter, but in one way or another, that's kind of the point. The book is pretty self-aware. That's the thing. I can't even dunk on this book for it being about nothing being the point because it is so self-aware of the book. The main character at one point literally says, "I love it when people don't stick to the point." So, I mean, it's J.D. Salinger, the author, is not trying to hide the fact that it's about that. It's kind of about nothing, but that's kind of the point. I sound a little bit like a guru saying it out loud, but it's all right. It left me pretty sad after reading it. It is not a happy book per se, but it is kind of, I think, what you believe will happen to the character and what he will decide to do with his life in the future shows you more about who you are than the book really does telling a story. That doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. I think it's one of these cases where what you think of the story is a really good way to figure out what you think about a lot of things. I don't know. In the end, it is kind of a character study on a kid who is just getting over, going through grief in his own weird way, and he doesn't fully understand it. This is definitely a book that I feel like, depending on when you read it, depending on how old you are, how much you put into it is how much you get out of it. It's definitely not for everyone, especially with the stream of consciousness. But I have to say I enjoyed it. I'm not a Catcher in the Rye denier. Neither am I a Catcher in the Rye super fan. I am just an average enjoyer, one could say. Yeah, I swear I'm not an incel for reading Catcher in the Rye. All right, next up we have... Okay, so still on October here. I couldn't help myself. We have The Green Mile by Stephen King. I couldn't resist. This is a pretty big book. It's about 500 pages. It's good. I mean, it's The Green Mile. What else do you expect? I'd seen the movie when I was very, very young, and I remember it being sad. And then as I read the book, I read the book because, one, it's Stephen King, and two, it's The Green Mile, and I saw the movie, and I was like, the movie's great. And when I was reading the book, everything that happened in the movie started to come back to my memory. And so it kind of ruined the entertainment aspect because I started to remember everything that happened, and I was like, oh crap, I know how this ends. I know it's exactly what's going to happen in this whole book. That is not exactly optimal. So that did kind of take away from my enjoyment of the book a little bit. I can't lie, because I knew it was happening and I started to get a little bored at points. I still think the book is great. I just wish I had forgotten more of the movie before I read it again. Still, the last chapter of this book demolished me. It's not even the part most people think of when they think of The Green Mile. This wasn't even in the movie, for what I remember at least. The last chapter doesn't have to do as much with the main plot, but it ties back the wide theme of the novel, and man, it hit hard. It hit really hard for me. I was thinking about it for days. I don't know what about it was. If you don't know, The Green Mile is about a man who works on an execution block of a prison. He basically watches and executes prisoners who got sentenced to death row. And the book is about this man who comes in, John Coffey, who basically is has the power to heal people with his hands. And he has been put on death row. And that's what it's about. So it's really good. I mean, it's great. It is long. I feel like it did drag at some points, but like I can't criticize The Green Mile much. Like it's The Green Mile. You can't really dunk on it. And it's not a fair dunk. I'm nitpicking at this point, but definitely didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would reading it. But I think that is attributed to the fact that I just remembered everything that happened, which always takes out some of the enjoyment. It was the same case with Dune that made me not like it as much either. But Dune was, I'm gonna pass on Dune. The last chapter of this book hit me so hard, and the last line especially. That line alone, to me, made the entire book completely worth it. It made it so worth it. I don't even know how to explain it. Just the last sentence in this book, I was like, I'm glad I read it. Like I'm glad I read it just to get to that last sentence. Amazing. The Green Mile, Stephen King. I love you, Stephen King. Okay, next up we have No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre. I did not say that right. Wait, Jean-Paul Sartre. I forgot. We read this one for school. It's a play, No Exit. It is about three dudes, well, I guess 2 girls and a guy trapped in hell. And that's it. They're in hell. It's pretty good. I'm gonna be real. It's covers some of that existentialism of, you know, what is how like people can be hell. We read it for school. I thought it was good. It really didn't blow my mind. It felt like The Good Place, but The Good Place obviously came after this play. This play was written in the 1940s. But if you've seen The Good Place, this felt like The Good Place. Like, I could tell The Good Place got some inspiration from No Exit, but I thought that was funny. It wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. I'm not really a play guy, but I thought it was good. It wasn't really my favorite thing ever. Wouldn't really die on this hill with this book, but I enjoyed it. Jeez. It was pretty short. I don't think I can count this as a book, but whatever. It's a play. Written by a French dude. Yeah. All right. Not bad. I don't know. I don't really have a huge opinion on that one. Okay. Let's see here. We are on November. All of the Pretty Horses. This is a Cormac McCarthy novel. And it's good. It is good. If you forgot, same guy who wrote Blood Meridian and The Road and No Country for Old Men. This is that guy. The pedophile, which I was like, dude. When I found out about that, I was like, bruh, let's not beat around the bush here. Cormac McCarthy wasn't exactly a great human being as a dude. He kind of left his family for a teenager when he was 40. So that's a little no. He's dead anyway, so I'm not really supporting him by buying these books off of second-hand sellers on eBay. The dude is dead at this point. Can't really agree that he was a great guy, but he writes good books. You can't deny it. He writes good books. It always makes me sad when there's great authors who are just not good people. It sucks. But we're not talking about Cormac McCarthy, the man. We're talking about his book, All the Pretty Horses. Okay, I got off on a side tangent there. But yeah, All the Pretty Horses is really, really good. It is about a teenager who, in the 1940s, I believe, it's about like a teenager in 1940s-ish, I think. He's in a long line of ranchers, Texas ranchers. So he lives on this ranch, and pretty much he really enjoys it. He really likes working with the horses and being on this ranch and everything. But through a series of events, the ranch is getting sold, and he's going to lose that life that he loved. So what he does is he grabs his cousin, and they take horses, and they travel to Mexico. This is, again, in the 40s, so they're like traveling on highways and stuff to get to Mexico. They meet people on the way. It's kind of episodic and adventurous in the beginning, but it does get violent. It does get really tragic at points, and there is a romance. I know a lot of people love the romance. I didn't think it was as good as people said. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was a little underwhelming at points. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't exactly amazing for me. I don't know. Still, really hit hard at moments, with like sadness wise at least. Really, really good. I mean, I honestly still don't know what to think of this book. I think I should reread it at some point. Again, I probably will. Cormac McCarthy is one of those authors that his books have so much reread value, and you can tell that as you are reading them. there's a lot that happens in this book. It goes to crazy places I was not expecting, and that was really cool. It was when I finished it, I wasn't sure if it was for me, but I could still appreciate the fact that it was really, really well done and really good. Cormac McCarthy never has typical plots ever, really. His books are pretty unconventional for the most part, and this is no exception. Um, it is the first book in a trilogy, but I've heard it does stand on its own. I have bought the other books in the trilogy. I have not read any of them yet. Um, but it is weird because I can't like parse the themes and put everything together fully yet. I feel like I need to read it again to fully understand this book. And that's what it feels like with a lot of Cormac McCarthy books. It never feels like you understand them fully on the first read. At least for me. I never feel like I fully comprehend them on the first read. In retrospect, this book is a lot better than I remember. Like when I think about it, I'm like, wow, this book's actually really good. Still, it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but the more I think about it, the more I really like it. And I think upon a reread, I would enjoy this book even more. Um, didn't hit as hard as I thought it would, judging by what people said about it. It didn't fully live up to my expectations, but I still think it was great, and it did surprise me at points that I didn't think it would in a good way. Um, so if it sounds interesting to you, it's kind of a like Western, but in the modern days. It is very much kind of about adolescence, growing up, things changing, but it is done in a really interesting, serious way. I mean, it's Cormac McCarthy. He writes very serious. It's not like as I don't know how to explain it. It feels it's written all rough and gruff is the best way I can describe it, but you can tell at the heart it is pretty tender, I guess you could say. I don't know how to explain it. It is beautiful. Cormac McCarthy's prose is really, really beautiful in this book. He has some beautiful sentences and everything. He has some you just don't understand. Again, it was hard to read at times just because of his writing style, but overall, I'd say it is pretty good. I really can't judge Cormac McCarthy for the unconventionalness of his books because it's just embedded into them. So weird plot stuff is just Cormac McCarthy. I mean, like it or not, that's just how he writes, and I can't. I find it hard to criticize the almost foundation of his writing, especially when he's just so beautiful about it. Sometimes you honestly can't get mad. There are some drags in this book, especially part two. Really wasn't that engaged in it. Honestly, it kind of dragged on, but there's kind of a purpose for it. Honestly, I don't really know. I just really do want to read this book in some years later. See what I think about it then. But this is definitely one of those books I don't think I fully understand, but I do appreciate, like Blood Meridian. But yeah, Cormac McCarthy is a really good author. Almost too good sometimes that I just don't understand what's really going on. That's, yeah, I kind of got a love-hate relationship with Cormac McCarthy's books. Okay, next up here, we have The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes. I have not read any of the Sherlock Holmes stuff, but this is The Lost World. It is a dinosaur book based on this goofy cover. My brother read this, and he told me that I should read it, and so I did, because All the Pretty Horses was pretty dense and pretty, like, yeah, it takes a lot out of you. Reading a Cormac McCarthy book usually takes a lot of energy, and when I'm done with them, I'm usually kind of drained. So I wanted something light, I wanted something fun, and that's what this was. Oh, that's what this was. It is The Lost World. It is about these dudes literally finding dinosaurs in this little crater. They find a whole treasure trove of dinosaurs, but I think it's a novel. It is a novel. I wasn't sure if it was a novella, but I think I looked it up, and the word count, it is a novel. It's only about this much of the actual book here. This is a short story collection along with The Lost World, but I'm just talking about The Lost World right now. It was fun. It is a pretty... It is exactly what it describes itself to be, which is a fun dinosaur story. That's really about it. The first chapter is incredibly good. It's super duper good. Other than that, this was just kind of a fun one. I don't really have a lot of particular, and I don't really have like a lot to say about this book, mostly because it was a fun dinosaur book. I mean, if you want a fun dinosaur adventure book, um, that's like pretty well done. I mean, yeah, it's not a masterpiece, but it's entertaining, it's fun, it's good, and it did what I wanted it to. So I'm happy with it. This book will come back because I read another one of the novellas or short stories in here, so that one will come back. But let's see here. What is next? We have, oh my god, okay. Play It As It Lays. I have seen this book. I saw it in the TV show You, in season 2, I think. The girl he likes in the show is reading this, and she's like, "You should read this book," and he's like, "Okay, I'll read it." And I just heard about it. I feel like I'd seen pictures of it before, and I was like, I guess I'll check it out. I found this bad boy at Goodwill for like $1, so I was like, I'll pick it up. It's short, really short anyway. Like, look at these freaking tiny pages. The chapters are super short. There's literally like 1-page chapters. I was like, fine, I'll pick it up. It's $1. I'll read it. Dude, this was the most depressing thing I've ever read. Well, almost, but this was like, I read this and I was so sad. I was roasted, man. I was absolutely demolished. I was like, why? What? I was not expecting it to be as sad as it was. The book does not have a plot. It is literally, it's one of those plotless books, and I can't exactly say that I liked it. I can say I could tell what it was going for, and maybe if I liked what it was going for, it would have been great. But I can't judge this fairly because to me it was so depressing, and it just came out of nowhere for me because I thought it was going to be, I don't know. It was the last thing I was expecting. Thought it was going to be about this girl in Hollywood, and it is about this girl in Hollywood. But it's more so about the way and how just a look into her life and the society around it in the 60s, and how it can kind of corrode a person's mental state in their life, and at least this is my interpretation of it, and lead them to get to feeling nothing. You know, the American dream deferred, like what happens, I guess, like the reality behind some of what people look at as the Hollywood dream, the American dream, what it can actually be like in reality, and how ruthless and unapologetic the lifestyle can kind of be, and create a person in this book who is effectively a nobody. She cares about practically nothing. She shows no emotions that are much relatable. She spends her days driving on a highway all day, and it is just it's depressing. It is so depressing. By the end of the book, you're just like, what? At least that was for me. I don't know. I don't think I would really want to reread this book ever, but I can see what it was going for, and if its goal was to show how depressing this girl's life can be, then yeah. I think I might be missing some other context with this book too, but I can't exactly say it's bad, but I cannot say I liked it really at all, because I read it pretty fast because it's really short. But what is it? Yeah, it's about 200 pages. But man, it may be short, but it's depressing. It is so depressing. I just didn't feel there was enough purpose to the depression, or I didn't understand the context for it enough, that I can't really say I like the book that much. It sounds interesting. Go check it out then. You know, I don't know. I am just giving my opinion. Okay. Next up on the list is one of my favorite books I read this year. It is so good. I don't even know how to explain it. It is so good. In my opinion, it goes into the category with Fahrenheit 451 in 1984. It is in that same ballpark for me. It is part of those books in my head canon. This is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This book was so good. I actually cannot stop talking about how much I love this book. I have to calm down because I love it so much. It is basically about, it takes place in a mental hospital, and is narrated through this person, this guy who's pretending to be deaf and dumb. He isn't, and he's in a mental hospital, but he's pretending to be, and it is about how screwed up this mental hospital is, and also about this man McMurphy coming in and kind of changing the whole place up, showing the guys in the mental hospital, like, I guess, how to live a little bit is what you could describe it as. Whether or not I agree with his ways of living a little bit are questionable, but you can't help but fall in love with McMurphy. He's not a good guy. I mean, he's not necessarily a good guy. I mean, he's in the hospital because he raped somebody. So, like, he's not a good guy. But I've seen people talk about this too. There's a certain point where it sounds bad, but he's so charismatic and likable in other ways that you just can't help but fall in love with McMurphy. I'm not saying I agree or support all of his actions in the book, but he is definitely a complex character. It's easy to look at him as just being bad, but the other things he does too, he's not good or bad specifically. And the way the book paints him specifically, I was more inclined to believe him as being good. There was a few things in this book that really did strike me as, that's a little weird. You would notice them when you read it, and I was like, ooh, that's a little, I feel a little weird. Okay, I cannot tell if the author is just like, like supporting this or what. I can't really tell. But like in the end, I don't know. I'm not trying to make an argument for or against some of the bad stuff that's in here. But as a whole, I like, for me personally, it's not enough to make me not like this book, because I love this book. I mean, there are some weird aspects in here that I'm like, okay. Anyways, all that aside, I still really do love this book. It's so good. I could say it's about like kind of individualism, being your own person in a society and a system, and it really covers that topic of like how oppressive society can be sometimes, not even through governments, but just through people, through actions of being different. And that's what this book is primarily about. People being different, aka the mentally disabled people in this hospital, and how it affects them, how it affects their lives. It's very nuanced too with this look at it, and it's so entertaining. It is funny as hell, and it is sad, really sad at points. This book had me like literally giggling while I was reading it, and also like depressed for the next 2 days because of how sad some things were. I literally could not recommend this book enough. It is so good. It is definitely, McMurphy's definitely kind of like a jock character, which normally I wouldn't even be a huge fan of, but if you read the book, you know what I mean by you start to really just like unapologetically love McMurphy. Man, the prose in this alone is incredible. The entire hospital is personified. The mental hospital is personified throughout the entire book, and the way it's done, it's just excellent. It is crafted so well. It's described as having like a heartbeat, as pulsing, and the main character, his narrations, he's the perfect vessel to experience the story through. He is not reliable in all regards at all, and that's what makes this book even better. His depiction of things is almost cartoonish at points, but it makes it feel so much realer. This one hospital feels like an entire different planet in the book. And it's immaculate. It is really, really got me to love a book. I've talked about a lot of books I really liked, but this one is on another level. And it just got me so excited about reading again because of how much I enjoyed it. It is a lot of things, and it does a lot of things well. Specifically, its look on society and how we discard people we find different and the effects of that on people, and how we tear others down because they're not the same as us, kind of. There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack with this book, and I adore it. I mean, it is freaking amazing. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is definitely like one of my top 5 books, period. Absolutely loved reading it. I knew by chapter 2, I was sold. By the end of chapter 2, I was like, this is going to be one of my favorite books, and it is, and it was, and it is such a joy to read. It's amazing. It does have those weird things, which I had mentioned, I don't want to get too specific into them because that's not what this video is about. But I didn't get much into the weird stuff that I was talking about here. But this video right here, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey, by P.T. Hilton, hope I'm saying that right. Really, really great video covering a lot of this stuff. He pretty much articulates it really well, in my opinion. Really very, very, very similar to how I felt about it. So really, if you're interested in all that, I'd recommend checking this video out because it covers it very well. He articulates it a lot better than I did, and I found this after I made the video, literally like a week ago, and I just thought he did a really, really good job. So if you are interested in that, then yeah. I love this book. I love this book so much. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is, for me, a certified classic. I just cannot stop raving about this book. Okay, honestly, read the first 2 chapters if you're interested. They're not that long, and you get a feel for the book pretty quickly on what it's going to be like. If it's not your cup of tea, leave it. If it is, you will probably know, and trust me, it just gets better. Okay, next up here, we have, what do we have? We're in December. We're in December now, okay? We have finished November. We are in December. Right now we're back to the Lost World, but we are not talking about the Lost World now. We are talking about, where is it? Oh, hold on. It's one of the short stories. I think it's a novella. I kind of forgot. It's either a short story or novella. We're talking about The Poison Belt. This is about, it is a science fiction little short story, and it's about if Earth went through a place it's outdated science, but it was if Earth went through almost a cloud of poison, what would happen? And that's what the book's about. It's honestly really well done, especially for how short it is. The way all the events lay out and happen is really, really cool. It was also to take a break because this one left me a little shattered. So the Cuckoo's Nest, by the time I was done with it, I was like, dude, that was so good, and I'm also really sad now, and I'm feeling a lot of emotions are going on right now, so I was like, I want to read something fun again, so I read The Poison Belt, and The Poison Belt was good. I liked it. Wasn't a masterpiece, like I was saying, it's not one of my favorite things ever, but it was enjoyable, and I liked it, and that's really all I got to say about it. I mean, it sounds interesting. Go check it out. It's not really anything grand, I would say, that I would be like, wow, but it just like The Lost World, it does its job, and it does it well. So yeah, I liked it. All right, I only got 5 more books after this. Getting close. Okay, so since we're in the month of December, I had figured I wanted to get into the Christmas spirit a little bit, so picked up A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is an abridged version. I borrowed my girlfriend's copy for the not abridged version because I didn't want to read a shortened one. Anyways, I'm just using this as the physical placeholder since this is the one I have at my house. Man, so good. I've never read any Charles Dickens before. This is my first look into it, but man, A Christmas Carol it's just so good. It made me very happy. It made me so happy when I finished reading this. It's really short. It's 110 pages, busted it out in a few days. But just the message, even regardless of it being a Christmas book, it is just so fun. It made me feel so happy and jolly. And I mean, it's a classic story. Everyone knows it. I kind of forgot exactly what had happened. And then it is, if you've never read the original book, I highly recommend it. Maybe put it on your phone or read it in your Christmas time. It's a pretty easy read, and man, it left me in a really, really good mood, which is, it's always fun. I had a really good time with this one. Literally nothing bad to say about it. It's a Christmas Carol. I mean, what else can you say? Okay, so the next book is, I forgot to record it. I literally just straight up forgot to put this in the list. But it is Ethan Frome. We read it for school. There's being a picture up there. Honestly, I don't have much to say about this book. I didn't really like it that much. I felt like it was one of those 40s books, very, very drama based. It's about this dude during the winter in Massachusetts, Starkfield, and basically his wife Xena is cold basically, and this girl Maddie comes in, and he kind of got a crushy on her. That's the book. It's like 100 pages. I didn't really like it that much. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't really my thing. I felt like Wuthering Heights performed the vibe it was going for, in my opinion, a lot better. And yeah, generally, I don't have much to say about this book. Kind of just read it for school and didn't think that much of it enough, so where I straight up forgot to record it in the video here. So yes, Ethan Frome. You could probably find more about it somewhere else. I don't really care to talk about it that much. It wasn't that bad, just wasn't really my thing. And generally, it was all right. The ending was kind of cool, but cool as it gets for Ethan Frome. Yeah, I don't know. That's about it. I don't have much to say about Ethan Frome. All right, next up here, I went to this bookstore, and I was looking for one book, which I'll talk about later. But I ended up finding two. I got 40 Lashes Less One by Elmer Leonard. That's somewhere. It's in like my drawer. I got too lazy to get it. I didn't read that one. The other book I got was True Grit by Charles Portis. I'd seen the movie for this as a kid. I saw the True Grit movie. The new one, not the one with John Wayne. The new one from in the 2000s or 2010s. I don't remember exactly when it was from, but I remember enjoying the movie. I was really young when I saw it, and I kind of forgot everything that happened except the end. Anyways, I was like, dude, I cannot go wrong with the book. I mean, I kind of have a weird relationship with Westerns. I always think I'm going to like them more than I actually do. And I hate to say it, but that was also the case with True Grit. It is, quote unquote, an American masterpiece, according to this little blurb at the bottom here. I can't agree. I hate to say it. I can't agree. I did not think it was bad by any means. I thought it was a good book. It didn't do it for me. I don't know what about it. It just, something about it didn't click with me. And I was really hoping it would. I was really excited to read this book. And it's good. Honestly, the more I've been thinking about it as weeks have passed since I've read this one recently now because it's December. But the more I think about it, the more I am actually starting to like it. Like, as I'm talking about it right now, it is growing on me more. But I think I like the movie better, which I know is a little blasphemous. People would probably crucify me for that. But the book is in first person. Okay, first off, if you guys don't know what the book is about, it is about a 14-year-old girl who goes to get revenge on her father yeah, I mean, that's it. That's pretty much it. I don't need to say anything more. The movie's phenomenal. I think you guys should watch the movie. I haven't watched the movie in a long time. And the book is good too. Honestly, I feel like if I hadn't seen the movie, I would have liked the book a little more. Because I remember the climax of the movie, and I thought that was like I thought that was like not the climax. I didn't really remember it being the climax, but it was, and so I thought it was going to get crazier while I was reading it. And there was also, for me, the first person in this book made it not as good as it could have been, in my opinion, at some points. It detracted from how great I feel like it could have been sometimes, because it is narrated by this kind of blunt, straight to the point, really kind of uptight 14-year-old girl who is, all just straight to the business, no slacking, none of that stuff. Very, like, religious and everything, too. A pretty stubborn 14-year-old girl. And it's written as a recollection when this girl got older. And you can tell from her writing, when she's older, she's, like, bitter and everything. And that just takes away from a lot. Because the coolest parts, it does make it honestly kind of funny, because the most dramatic and I guess most, like, epic parts, you could say, are narrated so just, like, unemotionally. Just like, oh yeah, this happened, this person got shot, almost died. And that's about it. Here's a Bible verse talking about it. Like, she'll go off onto, like, very spirited political rants, like the fictional narrator in this case. And it did make it a little funny, but she is so blunt at describing things and is just trying to describe what happened in its raw essence and her opinionated view. So it is biased in its narration, but in my opinion, it takes away from some of the really cooler parts in this. I feel like they start to fall flat because it is narrated so bluntly, which I guess is, some people say that is what makes some of it really good, and some people, I guess I disagree. I feel like the first person narration is fun, and I think it works at some points, and I really think it detracts from the book at other points that, in my opinion, I don't think having her narrate outweighs the cons. I don't know. Still, I'm glad I read it. Definitely would not say it's one of my favorites. I don't know. I was really hoping I would like it more than I did, and I'm just a little sad. I didn't like it as much as I did, especially reading all these reviews and stuff, and reading the afterword and people like loving it, and I was just like, I couldn't get behind being a little fanboy over this book. I just couldn't. I just don't think it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's as great as people say it is. I still think it is solid, though. I think it is solid. It's a respectable book. Okay. Next up here, we have The Stranger. Now, I'm going to be honest. I was pretty excited to read The Stranger. My girlfriend got me a few books for Christmas, and she had put in, like, my favorite books and, like, ChatGPT, and was like, okay, which one is similar to this? And then this is what came out, which I have kind of heard people rank it together, and I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And I was kind of hyped. It's like, okay, this is, like, my favorite books, and that'll be kind of cool. And also, like, I've heard about it. William Duthier, I still think I'm saying that wrong. I saw he had a video on why you should read it. I hadn't watched it, but I'd heard of the title before, and I'd heard people say it's good. So I read the whole thing in about 2 days. It's pretty short. It's about 100 pages. God damn, this book was depressing. This was this book made me angry. Okay? This book made me a little upset. And not because it was bad, but because of the message the author was putting out. I could not jive with it at all. It was, how I interpreted this book was that nothing matters. I might have misinterpreted it, but from what I've read online, Albert Camus, the French author, he was like an existentialist. And man, the book is about this guy after his mom dies. And it simply just follows this dude. There's not much of a plot. I don't want to give away what happens in the second half, because that's, like, I guess, the inciting incident. But what leads up to it is equally as important as the inciting incident, because the second half of the book almost goes back and covers the first half of the book, and gives it some more context. It is narrated in first person by this fucking deranged dude. I don't know how else to say it. This guy has no emotion. He is, I would just say, psychopathic, honestly. He doesn't care about anything. He has no real opinions on anything. And he just goes with it. That's really this dude in the book. He does change a little throughout, and if it is, it's becoming more detached. I'm going to give a spoiler alert because there's some things I want to talk about. So if you're interested in this book, then just skip to the next one because I'm going to spoil this. Okay, I'm going to spoil the whole book, actually. So if you don't care about it, then, listen to me. But if you want to read it, don't listen to me right now because I'm going to spoil the entire book. Okay, pretty much in this book, the main character or whatever, he shoots this Arab. I don't know why. He just shoots him. Well, you do know why. Basically, this dude is so impacted by how hot the sun is. He's like, I'm gonna freaking shoot him. I'm gonna shoot him. And he does. He just murders this dude on the beach. There's a lot of build up to it, but basically, throughout the book, it is shown that, like, when he is exposed to really harsh physical situations, it completely takes over and doesn't let him think straight. But he doesn't feel like he's thinking through the whole book, if that makes any sense. Anyways, he gets on trial because of this murder, and he gets put on death row. And then they start to go over his case, and you get to see the lawyer for him and against him. And the lawyer for him, it does terrible. He can barely make a case for this absolute, like, barely a person. I'm crapping on him more than I did when I was reading it, but the more I've thought about it, the more I hate what this guy represents, the main character in the story. Because he represents, to me, such a nihilistic viewpoint of nothing matters, and I'll get to that. But he goes over his trial, and then people are going over the trial and saying all the things that he's done in the beginning of the book because they hired like investigators and whatnot. And then you realize this dude's insane. Like, when you're reading it, it feels normal. You're like, okay, that's a little off. This guy's a little weird. He's like friends with people that like, why are you friends with that guy? He's helping people do like not good things. And like when the prosecution takes place and they're talking about it all, it hit me in that moment. I was like, this guy's nuts. And so then the rest of the book after the trial or during the trial is him basically realizing he's gonna die and there's nothing he can do about it. And he doesn't really care. People try to come in to, push their religious beliefs on him, and then he freaks out on a pope, or a priest or whatever. He's like, screw you. You think you're right? No, you're not. Nothing matters. Da 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 da. And then at the end of the book, he comes to this like catharsis of this stage of happiness. The book ends with him like smiling and being happy because he has found happiness and peace with the indifference of the world, is how it puts it. He has found peace that the world does not care what happens, and he does not care either, and he will die, and that's just the absurdity of the world, and nothing matters, and that's okay. And that is the ending. It is almost shown and painted as a hopeful ending. But here's the thing. I'm genuinely not sure if this is the author almost criticizing this mindset and giving a kind of tragedy study piece on like why you probably shouldn't think this way. But I heavily doubt that is what the author intended, because the way everything is phrased, the way everything is written, and I read a bunch about what like people's interpretations, because I was kind of confused when I finished it. And it seems to me, from what I found, I could be wrong, this is my interpretation, is that Albert Campus, the writer or the author, it seems like he believed this nihilistic viewpoint, and I just can't get behind it at all. I think it's a terrible way to live, with this belief that nothing matters at all, and now your decisions you make have any meaning or value to them. That is utterly ruthless, and it's one of those things that I haven't come up with a good counterclaim to, but for me, I know it's not true. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. That's how I'll put it. It's like, I don't have a good counterclaim for this book, but I feel like it's wrong, and then that makes me upset, because I am like, no, I completely disagree fundamentally on the idea that, we're in this world because nothing matters and everything's nihilistic and unimportant, and that just, something about that upsets me, which I guess is human nature on one hand, but also, I don't think it's true. And to me, it feels dangerous to have a book. I mean, I'm not saying this book shouldn't exist. I'm just saying, for me, it doesn't feel right, I guess. The message of the book, or what I felt was the message, does not sit right with me at all. And for that, I just really don't like this book. It's not bad writing, anything like that. To me, it's what the author's trying to say. I genuinely just don't like at all. I don't like any part of it. I guess I could see the finding hope in utterly helpless situations, but the way he comes to that conclusion is not, it doesn't jive with me at all. The Stranger made me have a mini existential crisis trying to interpret it and read it. So I gotta thank it for that. It made me think a lot. It is still making me think. So it was really challenging what I believed in and what I thought as true in my worldviews. So, I mean, if it can do that, then I got to give it credit for that at least. Like, it is definitely not a bad book. It's not badly written at all, and it definitely is interesting. For me, I actually start to like the book a lot when I look at it as what not to do. But I'm super opinionated about this book. I literally could not judge this unbiasedly if I tried. So that's my take on The Stranger, I guess. I like it as a cautionary tale of what not to become, because this main character is the last thing I would want to be in life. Yes, please don't make me this dude in The Stranger. I don't want to be him, and I think it's the perfect recipe for the most sad and utterly like purposeless life ever. It very much felt like Play It As It Lays, the one with the snake. This one, it very much felt like that. But Play It As It Lays felt less like it was agreeing with that mindset. It felt more of cautionary and Play It As It Lays, as like, this is what could happen when this type of life is lived by people, when society promotes these things, this is the consequence and this is what can happen. The Stranger seems to present it as, this is reality and here's how to kind of be okay with it. I don't know. This is getting really philosophical, more philosophical than I intended. Yeah, this book makes me feel really weird when I think about how I felt when I finished it. So, yeah, okay. Maybe that's the truth of the matter coming up. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Anyways, last book. This is the last book of the year. I couldn't end it with The Stranger. I couldn't end it with The Stranger. I had to read one more book, and that is No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. 3 Cormac McCarthy books. He's a good author. What can I say? Anyways, No Country for Old Men. I got this bad boy for Christmas, and man, this book blew me away. It was really, really good. Side note, I never said what the book was about. It is about this guy, Lewin, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He basically finds this drug operation gone wrong. He finds the remains of it, and he finds a big case full of $2 million. And he's like, let me take this. And then that sets off an entire chain of events. So that's the premise of the book. I never explained that. In my opinion, this is by far the most accessible, and it says it on the cover. This is the most accessible Cormac McCarthy book, period. If you are starting with Cormac McCarthy, if you're interested in reading Blood Meridian, don't read Blood Meridian first, but I would say probably this book. This book and All the Pretty Horses are probably the most accessible. I'd say No Country for Old Men is a lot more. It is surprisingly easy to understand, especially at the beginning. It flows like a movie because it was meant to be a movie. It was written as a movie, and then he wrote it as a book, and then they made it a movie anyway. But when you're reading it, you're like, this feels cinematic while you're reading it. I hear people say that, and it is true. It is insanely cinematic. It is so epic. Just really gruesome. The first 2 pages, first like 4-ish pages, actually almost left me like wanting to throw up. It was, to me, it was more vivid with the violence than Blood Meridian in far more regards, at least at the beginning. Honestly, the violence in the book, nothing compares to how utterly like sick the first 4 pages made me. I don't know what it was about it, but my stomach literally hurt after I finished reading. I had to put the book down after those few pages. It was so like vile and gruesome. That was the most disturbing thing I'd read, and it wasn't even that disturbing really for me. I don't know what it was. Something about it just really, really set me off. I don't know. But anyways, I really enjoyed this book with a huge, huge caveat. I genuinely don't like the ending. I know people would probably dunk on me because I know the movie's praised. I haven't seen the movie yet. I don't know if it's the same or not, but this book is incredible for the first half the book pretty much. It is great. The beginning is really, really good. The beginning is honestly incredibly good. The middle is super strong. It's going so strong, and then it just flatlines, completely flatlines. It kind of just ends way earlier than it feels like it should. And I kind of get what Cormac McCarthy was going with it. But it just kind of felt like, come on, man. Really? You're just going to end it like that? It felt cheap. the last 40 pages of this book have close to nothing to do with the actual plot, which is okay, but it just felt like salt on the wound. The ending, it felt like the book was ramping up and then it just ended prematurely. And then the end of the book had some really interesting takes on society and on life, and it was kind of just introspective philosophy on that, which is fine. Cormac does that a lot, but it started to feel a little too preachy, in my opinion, and I wasn't exactly fully on board with what he was saying. I totally get behind it, but it is definitely kind of beliefs for an old man. You could totally tell Cormac is self-inserting a lot of exactly what he believes through his character of the sheriff, which he's not trying to hide whatsoever. The book is called No Country for Old Men because one of the biggest themes of the book is kind of covering how, or at least the sheriff in this book, who narrates sometimes, it's kind of hard to explain. He views the world as kind of going junk, and he's like, so I don't know what we're gonna do about it, and it ain't the same anymore, and I don't know what to do about it, and yeah, we're going down the crapper, and this is, No Country for Old Men. I think it is a definitely more pessimistic view, but you can see how the characters would come to the conclusion. I could totally get behind the reasoning, and in some cases kind of agree with what they were saying, but not full-heartedly. I think maybe I'm still young right now, and so I feel more hopeful than the old characters in this book do. But I like to think of things as not being as bleak as they describe it in this book, and I think I just don't necessarily agree with all that, but that's okay. The book was still great in the beginning. I guess for me, it was the way it just cut up at the ending. I was like, come on. I feel like I lost so much of the punch there. And I know you could tell he was trying to go for something. And it just, to me, it didn't work. I don't know. To me, it didn't work. Still, the first half of this book was so good. Like, that's what makes the ending, to me, feel so... That's why I get so down about it, I guess, is because everything else was so great, and the way it just died, like a friggin' flat heart rate, just made me sad. I was just like, come on. Come on. I don't know. It's one of those things where you're just kind of disappointed when you finish it, which is never a fun feeling. Honestly, was not expecting that kind of dropping the ball with the ending from Cormac McCarthy, in my opinion. I mean, it's probably debated. Some people would probably stand by and die for the ending of No Country for Old Men, but I really can't say I do, or that I fully adhere and agree to the viewpoints that are stated and discussed in this book. I still think they're interesting. I still think they're worth reading and everything, but I'm starting to realize that I don't necessarily agree with them fully. So still, I can't even this thing just makes me, it is such a stark contrast of how great it is in the start and how flat it just kind of dies at the end and turns into kind of just a Cormac McCarthy podcast, honestly, just through his characters. But I guess I can respect it a little bit. Just, man, you see exactly how great it was, and that just makes the sting harder, in my opinion. Okay, this is post Nathan editing in the post. Hello, focus. I don't agree with a lot of the things I said here anymore for this book. I was reading some Reddit post, I don't remember why, and it had mentioned basically one of the beliefs of Cormac McCarthy was that the world's going down to crap and that this is a new thing. But then someone brought up that Blood Meridian exists, and I was like, wait a second. Blood Meridian takes place in the 1800s, and it covers obscene violence just like No Country for Old Men does. And I was like, wait, I don't think Cormac McCarthy was talking through Sheriff Bell in this instance. I genuinely thought he was, but I have to say I disagree now. I don't believe that Cormac is talking through the sheriff in this book. I think they are two separate. I don't think it's a Cormac McCarthy podcast. I think it is a different viewpoint that is almost, in my opinion, a little ironic now that I don't know how I didn't even realize this. Blood Meridian is covering this crazy violence that happened before anything in this book did, and it shows that this crazy violence is nothing new, but it's something that has existed for a long time in America, and that's even brought up in the book. But I just didn't. I guess I just didn't put it together. Still to say, I was still a little disappointed by the drop-off ending, but I think I understand it more now, and I'm not as upset about it as I think I was in this video. Can't necessarily say I still love it, but I think I understand it more, and yeah, I thought that was important to say, because I don't think that my explanation in here is accurate anymore. This is about a month later, just editing this while finishing it up. I found out about this a little recently, and so I wanted to mention it, because yeah. Okay, back to the video. No Country for Old Men, the last book I read this year. Oh my gosh, dude. This video turned out way longer than I thought it was going to. I was like, oh, it'll be like 30 minutes. And then I just started talking and I couldn't stop. I recorded this over the course of 2 days. Multiple recordings. My camera kept overheating. The battery died. So I kept having to take breaks and whatnot. But if you made it this far, I don't know what's wrong with you. But thank you. You are like a superhero and a superhuman. Thank you for listening to me yap. Even if you skipped around, still thank you for listening to me yap. It is equally as valid as watching the whole thing. Genuinely, just thank you for listening to me talk about books. I absolutely love reading. I love books. I love it all. I like writing. I love writing, actually. And thank you for watching. Thank you very much. If you were curious what I'm reading right now, I'm actually really excited about this book. I am reading Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. I'm about, let's see here, 174 pages in. I started it a few days ago. Man, already this book is great. I've heard so many, this is a fat little paperback, and I love it so much. I love these little fat paperbacks. I've heard so many good things about this book, and so far it's just completely living up. The characters are incredible. I can already tell this is going to be one of my favorites. I mean, it wouldn't even typically be something that I'd be that crazy about, but it's just done so well that I can't help but already start loving it. And it hasn't, I'm not even that far into it. The book's about 950 pages, and I haven't really cracked too far into it. Man, I'm enjoying this already. So I do plan to make more book-related videos on this channel. Nathan offline, because I'm offline. I'm not on the computer. I'm, reading a book instead. No. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this. It actually means a lot. It means a lot to me that you listen to me yap. And yeah, I'm going to be making some videos here about the book I'm writing. So watch out for those. They're going to be a lot more high quality than this video. Yeah, I'm excited. This has been a really fun year. Lots of books. I've never read this much, period, in my life. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I read so much. It just got to a point where I enjoyed it so much. I was like, I don't want to go on my phone anymore. I just want to read a freaking book. So, yeah, reading is kind of my pastime. This is extra jibber jabber, so you can click off if you want. That's about it. My camera is overheating again, which is very, very convenient timing. Thank you for watching this 3-hour beast of a video. If you liked it, subscribe. I'm going to be talking about more books, probably a lot on writing, a lot of writing videos, and I'm really excited to make those, share my progress with the book I'm writing, and I'm telling you right now, I don't think you will have seen writing videos exactly like this, and if you have, you probably didn't see them often. So I'm kind of hyping myself up a little bit. Nathan, please actually make the video. I'm talking to myself right now. Please make the video. You're going to look like a fool if you say all this stuff and then it never comes out or the video sucks. But yes, thank you for watching. Have an immaculate day, and goodbye.